Okay. If you would all join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, thank you. Got a good full house tonight. All right, we'll bring the October 20th Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. We would be starting with the minutes, but we're going to table those for this evening. We didn't get a chance to look at them yet, so.
And then Lou is asked not
Lou's-
to be here. He's asked to be excused.
Yep, okay, so Lou's absent tonight, so we'll fill him in on the goings on. So we'll start off with our financial reports.
I'll move payroll warrant 18.
All right,
I'll second it.
any discussion? All right, all those in favor? All right, moves that one. So we'll move on to accounts payable number 19. And I'll move 19.
Second.
Tom seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, well, we've got two. That's right. We're gonna have abstain and oppose. Okay,
I abstain.
Mark's abstained, so we
You need three votes.
need
to
three.
approve it.
Yeah, so that motion will not carry right now.
You got time.
So, yep. All right, and AP 20.
I'll move AP 20.
Josh moves 20. I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. So move on to some presentations. Martin, we have some presentations tonight, Matt, do we?
Yes, Chief Warlick has a very exciting presentation to make.
Chief,
And take the mic there.
kick Nick out of the way there if you want. Yeah.
He's in the hot seat.
He's up next.
Check.
Flip the switch on, please.
He's good. He's all good.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't really know how to stand here. Easy. Right. So for everybody in the room and everybody on TV, at approximately 5 p.m. on 8/28/2021, Officer Booth was dispatched to a local business for the report of an accident involving a motorcycle and a parked truck. Once on scene, Officer Booth observed a woman with a large wound or gash on her leg, and she was bleeding profusely. Officer Booth was aware the area that the wound contained major arteries, and the woman could die from severe blood loss due to that wound, and she was bleeding profusely. Officer Booth used his extensive military and law enforcement training and applied a tourniquet and was able to stop the bleeding until medics arrived. It is no doubt that his quick thinking and level-headed action to that situation helped save that operator's life. On behalf of the town of Damascotta, as well as the police department, I would like to award Officer Booth with the 2021 Life Saving Award.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
I think on behalf of myself and the board here, we'd like to congratulate Officer Booth for his fine work, and he'll probably just say it's a day in the life of a police officer, but we appreciate all their hard work. So our local department, I think, exemplifies community policing. We're lucky to have them. So.
Now I'd run.
All right, thank you. Yeah. You brought the whole family along. Thank you.
And you got a haircut for it.
Ah,
And I did. All three of them.
That's awesome. Yep, awesome. Make sure, Matt, does that get on the website, something like that? Yeah, the award
will,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. So, all right, well, I think we're gonna move on to our next presentation. All right. Ready, Nick? You can just introduce yourself there to the folks at home.
Good evening. My name is Nick Bryan. I'm the service chief at Central Lincoln County Ambulance Service. here to propose the preliminary budget for 2022. Can I start screen sharing, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently you're going to get that view while I get that view. So there we go. Okay. So some of the big factors on the budget this year. We need to maintain our quality service that we serve all 9 towns, depending on how you look at it with, as well as interfacility transfers between Miles and Main Med that get residents of our towns to tertiary care that they need. To do so, we need to attract and retain staff, provide career opportunities. That's a big thing you're going to hear me talking about tonight. Key financial factors obviously are pay, benefits, overtime, whether that be forced overtime or more accurately depicted as burnout. What's needed, obviously salary increases, provide career opportunities and town support. So going into the goals, maintaining the quality of service, that's kind of a self-explanatory point. I'm very proud of our ambulance service. We provide some of the best care in the mid-coast and the entire state of Maine. I'd put our paramedics and EMTs up against anybody in the state. They're dedicated. A lot of them are local or live within a stone's throw of the station, come in on their days off to help cover extra calls. They're excellent. We need to maintain that. As far as attracting and retaining staff, we do need a couple extra paramedics. At the time of the preliminary budget meeting, as you know, there's a significant increase financially this year to the town. So we wanted to start it early. At that time, we only had 3 full-time paramedics. After going into this next meeting, after the preliminary talks, it's an open meeting. What went on in that meeting got around, obviously. You were there, you saw how many folks were there. We're at full staff for full-time paramedics now. So a lot of that comes from the preliminary conversations had. Nothing was obviously promised to the employees, but it's very rare in EMS to have the backing of a board or select board that is interested in making it a career place to live, or excuse me, work. We'll get more into that, but career opportunities, it's never really been done in EMS. There's a lot of fire rescue, that's career, but sole EMS hasn't really been career outside of large cities. You have, Delta or Northeast Ambulance, but I mean, with the exception of 1 or 2 before me and my generation are kind of the first group of folks to come through EMS and say, this is going to be my career, and not move and work in a place like South Portland or Brunswick, and be solely EMS. So to make that happen, obviously their base pay has to be on par. I don't think anybody's driven around town and not seen signs, paying starting pay $15 to $19 an hour. And we'll get into what we currently pay, but when you can work at a place where you don't need to maintain a medical license, you don't need to work nights and weekends, you don't need to work holidays, you don't work overnight. It's very hard to attract and retain staff when you're competing with that. Benefits, we're not a municipal organization, we're quasi-municipal. Obviously you and 5 other towns own us, but we can't provide the exact same benefits that a municipality can. So when they can provide, a 2/3 state retirement after 25 years, we need to look at matching that when we talk about like a 403B, which would be our equivalent of a 401k. Our contributions to that need to be somewhere in the ballpark of that, as well as health benefits, dental, anything that a normal municipality would provide if you worked for them doing EMS or fire or police. Overtime, it can be a perk to the job, but this past summer, I think, as anybody who's been involved in EMS could tell you, it was very busy. EMS struggled a bit within the county. We had people working very, very long hours, very, very large overtime quantities, which the first couple of weeks you do that, it's a nice paycheck. But after the 12th, 13th, 14th weeks in a row of doing that, it burns you out and people end up leaving the field. We've been lucky that we haven't lost anybody to burnout or vaccinations yet, but you can see it, looking around the station, you can see it looking around the county. People are getting tired, and that comes from a long time of this not being a career. It's been, something people do on a volunteer basis and then on like a per diem basis. And we still do have a bunch of very dedicated individuals that work like weeknights in between their normal job, but they can't fill weekday shifts. They have a 9 to 5 job Monday through Friday. They might help a shift on the weekend, but we're trying to staff 4 people during the day shift, the night shift, 2 days on the weekend. That's not where you want to be if you've already worked 5 days all week and worked a night overnight at the ambulance station. It takes people that this is their career to fill those sort of gaps. you know, it's not what the volunteers can really do anymore. It's become unsustainable. You're not coming in and, you know, going on one call. It's, you know, we're up to over 2,000 calls every year, and that's not going anywhere. So we kind of went over the salary increases, what's needed there. It needs to be a living wage. It's not getting cheaper to live around here, as anybody knows. The career opportunities kind of spoke to as why that's important. And ultimately, to make that happen, we need town support. We can't increase our billable revenue. We can't, I mean, people only fall down so much. People only have heart attacks so much. And we do everything we can do, but we can't increase our cost for service. As many of you know, the Center of Medicaid Services kind of regulate that quite heavily. They kind of dictate what you're going to make, what they're going to pay you, and then they pay you a percentage of what they think it costs. So that might be going up the next few years, but the cogs of the federal government don't exactly move quickly. So, and quite honestly, they're basing it on what it costs us to do business now, not what it costs ambulance services to do business if they actually paid EMTs and paramedics, quite frankly, what they're worth. So going forward, here's our call volume for the last 3 years. Cuts off 2021, but this is basically the top 4 are the 4 major categories for 911 calls. So you look right across it, canceled. 2019, there were a lot of those. We kind of went down last year. Last year was kind of an asterisk because of COVID. This year, we're trying to find the new norm. If you do the math, we're actually on par when I ran these numbers to run roughly the calls we did last year, somewhere between roughly, I think it was 2,350 was what it would be at if you run those calls by the end of the year at the rate we've been running them. So that's consistent. We're on a trend up back to where we were. Transfers are up a little bit this year compared to last year. That's been due to some staffing issues anywhere and everywhere. There's been a lot of issues like Northeast and Delta Ambulance, which are traditionally transport for-profit ambulance services, haven't been as available to help on the overflow. So a lot of times, you know, a patient will have to wait for us to get back from AMED to go back down. And there are a few other services that provide that as well, but it's being put onto us and a few other services a lot more than normal. And for whatever reason, it's anecdotal and there's no stats to back it up. The acuity's gone up in the last few years. If you talk to the ER docs, they'll attest that. It's not necessarily COVID related. It's not necessarily anything. People are sicker now, and I don't know why. It just, again, take that for what it's worth. It's anecdotal at best, but it's a shared sentiment across emergency services right now, emergency medical services. So this is payroll versus actual for the last 3 years. 2019, that was our kind of the transition year. Got to work with the budget that kind of got made up by a bunch of folks in the transition before I became the chief in the middle of that year. So you see, we came a little under payroll expenses. One of the things I would say to keep in mind when you're looking at these is that it doesn't show as an expense, at least in the way that we run the numbers now. We're trying to find a better way to track that, but not look at it as an expense, but left on the books, earn time. This year, like I said, a couple of people just started in the last month. We finally get to send somebody on their first significant vacation. A lot of the paramedics that work with us haven't taken a vacation of more than 2 or 3 days in years. The last time I took more than 4 days off was 2011. So it doesn't happen very often. Okay. So that's something to keep in mind. That's one of the expenses that, while it doesn't show on the expense line, is still sitting on the books. But you see in 2020, we tried to project the payroll budget, pretty much nailed it that year, came in $8,000 under budget. This year will come in a little under, but like I said, there's a lot of factors there as far as like anticipated overtime for having to cover somebody being gone, as well as somebody being gone. Because like we said, if somebody leaves for a week, those weekday and weekend shifts, you're going to oftentimes have to pay a full-time person to cover them because nobody else is available. So the salary survey, looking around the county, these are the 3 job titles that were included. There is one more for Waldeboro that's a driver. We didn't have an equivalent, so I just kind of left that off. I can probably get that number if I lean back here in a second. But so for us right now, we're at $15, $16, and $20 an hour for EMT, AMT, and paramedic in that order. So for 2022, one of the things we wanted to go for was increasing that to what a lot of the bigger cities pay, as well as something we determine is a living wage for those jobs and competitive in the job market. One of the things you won't see on here is what you could get paid at a local convenience store or something like that, or even being a medical assistant, for instance. One of our providers has a significant other that works there, and they make $21.90 to be a medical assistant, and the job title is on par with being an EMT. You know what I mean? It's not the same job, but it's something that someone who is an EMT could train to do that job, work better hours, and in theory make way better money than they're making now. So that's our target for next year. As you can see, this year already, Booth Bay pays significantly better than most of the services around the county. I talked to their chief. He anticipates increases. He wasn't able to share what those are going to be, so that's undetermined. Waldeboro EMS, they were a little bit behind us on pay. Where you see that arrow, they're going to that on November 8th. That's going to be their pay rate to round out this year. And then you can see starting in 2022 what their pay rates will be per license level, which is essentially on par with what we're shooting for. And Wiscasset EMS, they're basically right there with us, exactly with us actually. They anticipate increases, but their director wasn't comfortable saying what or if there are going to be any. I believe there will be some, but what they are remains to be seen. I think the big part for us is having the range for each license level, because it's like anything that you folks do. Somebody that's starting on their first day and somebody that's been doing that position for 5 years they're not worth the same. That's, job experience. As you get experience, it helps to know that you're working towards a higher wage as you get more skills, get more experience, and feel more valued at the position, which we think will help with retention, as well as just motivating people to better themselves in the license level they're at before they go to the next one. Are there any questions on that slide before I go on? That's a big one. I don't feel comfortable just going to the next one without entertaining questions on
Questions
that
from
one.
the board? It's
Okay.
pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why are they
It's
now?
out there. Yeah.
Competition for staff. That's anybody who's running an EMS organization right now, especially locally, will tell you it's hard to attract and retain enough full-time staff, let alone per diem staff, to fill their schedules. Nobody's doing it easily. It is a struggle right now. And I think ultimately, like I said, we need to look at this occupation like a career, not a hobby any longer. Again, volunteerism is a wonderful thing. It's what's held the fire service together for years and years and years, and hopefully does for years to come. But it's starting to kind of fail in that aspect of the EMS realm. We need to plan on our larger percentage being professional in this occupation, and to keep people in the profession and not be a stepping stone to nursing or PA school or NP or going on to a fire department down south or up north. We need to pay comparable to those sorts of jobs. Otherwise, people are going to leave the profession. That's just, you wouldn't want to keep the people that weren't motivated to better themselves. So we need to give those options within our career field. So yeah, that's going to help with shift coverage. That in theory will reduce overtime, which again, overtime looks like a cost on an expense sheet. But to me, it's burnout, especially this summer. We need to reduce that. We need to give people time off. They need to have lives outside of EMS. It is a lifestyle, but there's a point where
Can't do it forever. That's
we're living on a lot of goodwill from a lot of good people, but the bucket is going to run dry eventually. And develop careers for all the previous mentioned points. So town allocations, these are the last 3 years running. And the last 2 years, stable-ish. One of the things to remember is depending on what your town ran for call volume, even if we ask for the same amount every year, that number is never going to stay the same, because it's based 50% on tax valuation, 50% on call volume. So there was a moderate increase from 20 to 21, our overall ask of, if you do the math, it's like $12,000. And that was a lot of medical supplies during COVID, but we kept payroll flat. We kept all of those flat. 2022, those are the projected asks. So there are significant increases for many of the towns. There's no way around that. I do think those amounts appear a little easier when you factor in what some other towns pay. These are the allocations from Booth Bay and Booth Bay Harbor to the Booth Bay Region Ambulance Service for 2020. That's not what they're going to pay next year. That's what they paid this year at their current pay rates, which is, each of those towns is paying over $100,000 more than this town would pay, or any of our towns would pay, to not even pay what we're paying now if we go forward. Waldeboro, I talked to Director Lash probably a month ago when I got that number. That was his estimate of last year's budget on what it costs, their revenue versus their overall budget. So obviously it probably isn't exactly that amount of money. Again, you might be able to get that information elsewhere in the room, but that was Richard's best guess at that time. In Wiscasset, Director Bean provided that number for 2020. That's what it cost their taxpayers to run their ambulance service. So when you compare it that way, it's really hard to argue that you get a bargain. We provide a great service. We staff 2 trucks. We keep the costs as low as it is by doing the transfers, which is a twofold thing where if you had to stop doing that, not only would it cost you more money, because yes, you cut payroll in half, but you cut revenue in a quarter. We don't bring money in from 911 calls. That's just not where money's at. And EMS is a reason for-profit ambulance services do predominantly transfers. That's where the money is. So while it helps keep your costs low, if you have a heart attack and I get you to Miles, the men and women down there are great. They'll take good care of you. They'll stabilize you, but you need to be at the cath lab in Maine Med. And you can't just jump in the car and go there. It's not how it works. So that's a great service that 3 out of the 4 ambulance services in the county provide. And we all kind of need each other to make that happen. But yeah, that's, I don't really know how I was going with that one, but it's something to think, keep in the back of your mind that not only does it keep your tax bill down, but it provides a necessary service that everybody in this community needs. So in summary, salaries need to go up. They're going up around the county, whether we like it or not. Quite frankly, need to keep up. We can't be the busiest ambulance service with the lowest pay. That just isn't a model that works and is not sustainable. The job market in this field has become increasingly competitive. People around the state realize they want an ambulance to respond, and more people are getting out of the field for various reasons. If you want to retain the staff you have to treat them at least as well as everybody else is going to treat their staff. And developing a pay scale is important. I think that's what's going to keep people in their profession, drive them to do better, and let them know that, they're not going to make the same in 5 years at the same position. It gives them a path forward. So that's kind of my quasi short presentation. There's obviously a handout with some of the information in there for you folks. I'd be happy to answer questions.
So on the career path, necessity for a career path, are you planning to put together a career path program?
It's not as simple as that for us, where, a larger organization could say, do you want to specialize in this or specialize in that? We have between 10 and 12 full-time EMTs or paramedics, depending on where we're at that point. Everybody kind of has to specialize in everything, but as far as merit-based raises, much like a municipality would do, whether it's this certification, you get your ACLS is a bad example. It's one of the certifications we require all paramedics to have, but say an EMT or an advanced EMT wants to go and do that, which is above their scope, but it provides a greater knowledge base for them to support the paramedic. That absolutely should be worth more, but that is absolutely something we're looking into mixing that with years of service and finding a model for that.
So you are saying you're going to develop a career path program. You got some limitations as to what it could be, but
yes, absolutely.
Nick, you're the full-time employees there. What are they? You talked a little bit about benefits as far as time off and whatnot, but right now, is there insurances or what are they?
They get health insurance. Only the employee gets insurance. They have to pay for any additional family add-ons. We don't provide any percentage of family at all. Apparently it's actually, looking around, we did a wage survey like 3 or 4 years ago where every EMS agency that we had looked at locally, or even as far as Augusta, they are providing 100% of the employees' health insurance, which we're actually not part of the Maine municipal pool, which somehow saved us money. Don't know how that worked, but that's a benefit provided to the employees. We provide, each full-time employee gets 2 weeks of vacation. There is no scale at this point for years of service. You get 2 weeks.
2 weeks, and
that's that.
You mentioned not 401k, but
it's a 403b because we're technically a nonprofit organization, but it's a 401k, but you work for a nonprofit.
And that you have that currently.
We have that currently, and the full-time employees or any employee that works over 1,000 hours a week, or 1,000 hours a week.
Yeah, well,
It just feels like,
it's not
it
far
feels
from
like
it.
that.
Yeah.
Sorry, apologies. 1,000 hours a year.
Yeah.
So that's essentially, they work 2 or more shifts a week, which is a lot for somebody that's not their full-time job, 20 hours a week or more. They also receive the match, which right now is 5%. But if you start talking to a municipality, they match between 9 and 13% for state retirement. So we're not looking to hit that right now, but
Yeah.
that's something to factor in. That's huge. That's something that's
Yeah.
really hard to compete with when other ambulance services are going to pay the same and offer you a state retirement that we can't offer.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, the benefit side of it is can be huge. That's
Yeah,
yeah. The pay
absolutely.
scale on one side, benefits on the other, and it's
yeah,
hard to, yeah.
very tough.
I was, I'll be honest, I was surprised to see the pay scale. Yeah.
Well, and that's the hard part. And
Yeah.
this thing we've been struggling with over the past 2 or 3 years as we, work up to where we are now is we can't change our revenues. And you folks traditionally paid such a small part of our budget that if we go up $20,000 at one point, it's 100% increase for every town. And it's tough. It looks really bad on paper. I'm not going to lie to you. It's 100% increase. But when you look at what it costs around the state to provide EMS services, we're still extremely low cost for what we're providing to our employees and providing for a service. So I think it's an easy sell, but I'm the one selling it. So
You're in the hot
that's for
seat.
you to determine, I guess.
So Nick, if you got, if everybody, approved this and you've got another board meeting and you got other discussions, but how would it situate you going for the next, let's say, 2-3 years?
Well, the hard part, and it's something we've been talking to some of the town administrators about, is a lot of you don't pay us till the end of the year. For example, not to pick on you, but as you were talking about, the town of Damascotta haven't given us the funds that we operated on for 2020. So we've been doing that off of savings. So to give the raises that you're going to fund, if you pay us, at the end of next October, it's really hard to give the raises January 1, where this is going to be such a substantial increase to payroll. Our hope and a lot of conversations had been had. I know Bremen was pretty forward about trying to maybe use the ARPA funds to either front load part of their payment or how it was going to happen. It's something obviously Matt could speak to a little better than I.
The payment was approved as part of the AP warrant tonight.
Yeah, I'm not
And
worried
I'm
about
just saying that we didn't wait till the end of the year. It's
No. I'm just saying that, it's,
just for information.
no, I'm
purposes.
not saying that you're not paying your bills or you're putting it off. Just a lot of you operate on a fiscal budget. We operate on a calendar year. So while we start our budget on January 1, there's no hope to get paid by any of our towns till at least June. July. That's just how it is. And that's a struggle. That's not on you. It's not on us. It's how it works. And that's a little bit of a bump in the road to give the raises January 1. There are ways around that, but that is a bump going forward in the next 2 to 3 years. One of the things I'm kind of hoping the board and the selectmen around our 6 towns can get on board with is saying, this is where we're at now. We start developing similar to what you do with your town employees. There's a cost of living increase or something that keeps you up there. It's not a huge jump every year, but it's 1 to 3% depending on what the market is, and just keep up with it instead of having to do big jumps.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, EMS is evolving right now. It's a transition from a volunteer / part-time job into a career. And that's a big jump, and it's hard, but I think it's something the citizens need. It's something the providers that work for us deserve. But there's no easy way around it. It does cost money.
I got 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
One would be, if you look back 4 years for what you did and what you charged towns,
Mhm.
and it sounds like you kept it pretty flat, where maybe it should have been increasing just a little bit so that we can just get that smaller line coming up for the taxpayer rather than having spikes.
Well,
And I think going forward, that's what I think our goal would be too, is wherever we end up, is to get that so that similar to the schools,
Mhm.
we want that line to be as flat as within reason, we want to get it as
Yeah.
flat as we can.
I think if you were to look at
Or
it,
not flat, I shouldn't say that.
It
Just
is-
have your-
it's
It's
a steep.
Yeah,
It's a consistent rise, but it's been steep. And I think that comes from where we were financially when I took over
Yeah.
to where we are now, where we're actually stable. And you've now thrown in, an international pandemic. You've thrown in whatever you want to call what's happening with wages right now in every field of work. Unfortunately, we're not a restaurant and we can't line people out to business 1 waiting for their ambulance. We have to have 4 people on staff. We can't just shut a truck down for the day. It's not that has ripple effects across the county, is whether it be transfers or providing mutual aid or receiving mutual aid. We all need to kind of have where we're at right now with trucks to make this whole system work. And if it doesn't, things can get shaky. And we live rural now, so you have to wait for an ambulance depending on where you live. Because, if you live at Pembroke Point, it's going to take us 10 minutes to get down there. You don't want to, on top of that, put the truck's already on a call. Now they need to get back, clean the truck, and then go. And,
Sure.
it's rough.
Long call times.
My other question would be is if you look at the town of Damascotta for the number of calls that we have, call volumes, and I understand the 50% going on value, 50% on calls is what you'd propose to do.
Yep.
Now, us being a service center, when you have the transports and, how much of that is being a service center, I guess where I'm after, because we're a service center, our numbers are going to be higher.
100%. Yes.
So how do
I
we?
think that's where tax valuation comes in. I had the exact opposite conversation 3 weeks ago at another town's selectman meeting who wants it entirely based on call volume and population, which quite frankly, you folks don't want. The formula is a great discussion. It's why I would encourage as many selectmen are available to come to our next board meeting. It's going to be a topic of discussion. I know at the end of the day what the funds we need from the 6 towns are. How they're broken up is entirely up to you. The 5 of you, 4 of you, but ultimately 5 of you with all the other selectmen. You're my bosses in this situation. I tell you what I need. The formula can be as complicated or as simple as the 6 towns want it to be. You can each pick your own factor. We can have 6 different factors in it. I frankly don't have a dog in the fight. So
no matter where we end up with this thing,
Mhm.
Damascotta can say, because we're a service center, we are taking care of a lot of the people from these other towns.
it's fair to say that it gets convoluted because there will be a counterpoint to, well, you have Pembroke Lake Campground. You have campgrounds. So, people that live from outside of the community come in there, but then Bristol will say, we've got the beach. Then somebody will say it should be population, whose population swells in the summer versus the winter, but your population swells only because of people coming to Hannaford. I'm not, it's as clear as mud.
Yeah.
You could argue this 1,000 ways from Sunday. And you're not wrong. Nobody's wrong. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
And ultimately, like I said, the formula can include, each town can pick a factor, and it doesn't matter to me all that much. I think it needs to be fair, and you all need to come to some level of consensus. But I think getting all 6 towns, having been to a few of these meetings, getting all 6 towns to agree on the exact same formula will be impossible. There are so many perspectives, and I would encourage you folks to come, because there are some proponents of 100% call volume or 50% call volume, 50% population, which, you see it no matter which year you're looking at. You do a third or more of our calls every year. I don't think you want to pay a third or more of our budget. And
Right.
Of all the formulas, I don't know as that would be fair, but
I just wanted to make a point that we are a
Absolutely.
service center. and
Yeah.
This is what.
that needs to be factored in. I think all the towns need to remember that although Damascotta does most of the calls, if somebody falls on Main Street, the percentage of times that the residents actually live in Damascotta is low. If you have a problem at Hannaford, at the Y, you get a fender bender on Main Street. It's not always a Damascotta resident.
Okay, thank you.
So
Nick, I was going to ask you a little bit looking forward, but future wise, infrastructure wise with their ambulances, the building itself and things like that. Size wise, are you good? Are you looking at expansions or anything, or any major things? Just looking budget wise down the road.
yeah, no expansions as of yet. The big thing has been for us is getting caught up on ambulances. We'd skipped a few replacements in the mid 2010s. And we do have Unit 81 that's approaching 200,000 miles. And unfortunately, that was a remount. So that's where we take the ambulance box off a chassis, put it on another chassis, and it ages a little quicker on the box of the ambulance wise. But we've raised most of the funds to replace that. And although we do have the budget line, we've been slowly upping the capital expenses from the
That's gonna
towns that
ask you
go
the
in. We've been
capital
slowly upping
expenses
that, but a
up.
lot of that money comes from donations and the capital campaign that we were on last year, where you saw we got 2 new ambulances. They were
Yeah.
100% funded by donations. And all the donations that went out above what those 2 costs have gone towards the next ambulance. So, we essentially funded 2.5 ambulances out of the kindness of the community. We have a lot of very generous people in this community, and that's helped us where we're at. As far as the
That's
building
great.
goes, there's a few things, it's already been retrofitted to have 4 bedrooms. So there's enough bedrooms for the staff right now. I don't foresee, at least in the next 5 years, they need to put on a 3rd truck, especially at night. The volume's not there yet. To say it couldn't go there would be naive, but we'd have to see a very sharp uptick in call volume to require 3 trucks on duty. So
Yeah.
our lodging and our station right now is adequate and should be for the next 5 to 10 years.
So Nick, I noticed you're looking for a marketing person for fundraising.
Yeah.
Do you see that next year, kicking off next year?
We have that starting this fall, because you guys have probably got it in the mail. We get the annual letter we send out. We're a CLC ambulance. Where, a lot of folks like to make donations to nonprofit organizations because it's tax deductible. We've had a lot of luck with that in the last few years. Obviously, last year being the ambulances themselves. This year, one of the things that the gentleman's helping us out with is we're going to shoot for auto load for the trucks. That's something you see in a lot of the ambulance services. A lot of the fire departments have them. Delta Ambulance has them. Essentially, what it does is it helps with our liability insurance as far as workers' comp. It's a system where the stretcher loads in and you don't actually have to lift, it loads itself in. It's kind of becoming an industry standard. One of the leading injuries of EMS folks is back injuries. I mean, if you meet an EMT or a paramedic that's over 35 and doesn't complain about their back, they haven't really been doing it that long. So that's a big factor that we're hoping to get. We use a mixture of writing grants as well as looking for the annual donations. It goes towards something different every year. That's what we're going for this year. We've had a decent amount of success. As you can see, we usually budget for roughly $50,000 in donations every year. And by the end of the year, we usually hit it. So that's what we do with that. It helps offset the capital expenses to the taxpayers. So we'll continue to do that. And if we can do more than that, then we will, but it's
That's good.
by all means something we're trying. So.
I get questions.
And the other, I was gonna say, you're quiet down the end there.
Well, I went to the meeting and asked questions there, so
Yeah.
when I went to your preliminary budget meeting, Nick, there was a lot of talk about transfers.
Yep.
Other agencies not coming up at night or whenever to do their transfers, which they came from that area.
Yep.
So they'd always call on you guys to assist. I've been given this a lot of thought, and if they're coming from Booth Bay region or Wiscasset, and if they're not going to provide their people with a transfer service, I guess I'm getting to the point where how is it CLC's responsibility if it's a patient of Lincoln Health or Maine Health? If they're going to have that person there, how is it ultimately that it's their patient? They need to find a person or somebody to come transfer them.
I
Is
understand.
there any money that comes from Maine Health or Lincoln Health
No.
to cover that? Because ultimately it's their patient.
No, the hospital does not pay for transfers out of their facility. That, like, if you're talking about somebody in the emergency room that needs to go
Correct.
down to the cath lab or something like that. You're opening Pandora's box. I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. First and foremost, I will say that other ambulance services have helped us out in the past. The large portion of transfers out of the ER at night this summer did fall upon us because of various staffing issues. It hasn't always been the case. I will say that does stand to benefit us on one hand, because as we talked about earlier, transfers is where we make the lying share of our profits that come from receipts, if you will, non-town or contract town profits. So that's where a lot of the billable money comes from. So we will see a benefit from that. To say that every person's well insured that we take would be a lie, but more often it's profitable than not. There's also the moral question of there's a person at the hospital who needs life-saving care and they get out of Maine Med, we have an ambulance available. How do you say no to that as far from just a moral standpoint? And also there have been times where, yes, we're taking down say a Waldeboro resident, we'll pick on her because she's in the front row.
I'm not picking them.
No, say we take a Waldeboro resident down. While we're down there, one of our residents needs to go and then Waldeboro takes them down. So that does happen quite a bit, particularly with Waldeboro. They've helped up a lot of the transfer business with us this summer.
Ultimately, if there's an issue and you guys are burnt out and you got to take your break, but ultimately, if your founding towns have an individual that needs to get transferred, or versus a individual from another town that has their own service.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to be in.
It's a really, it's a slippery slope. That's fair. Because I mean, if there's I'm going to get morbid and speak in EMS terms. If there's a head-on collision on Route 1, something awful happens, more than one person's hurt. In a perfect world, we can probably get that third truck staff with the calling crew for real bad stuff. But if 3 people need to make it to Main Med from miles, Life Flight's not flying, and we only have 2 trucks, so we can't take all 3 to Main Med. One has to cover the 6 towns. You can't just leave the station dry. That third person has to wait because we won't help Waldeboro or Boothbay with their residents. So now they're not going to help us. It's a slippery slope.
But I guess my point is, if they're going to provide the service to all the residents during the day or when things are going good, and then they just, they're paying top dollar higher than anybody else and trying to poach people off from different services, but then they're not going to turn around and provide a service for the residents. I guess I have a problem with that. And it ultimately is it CLC's responsibility to always have to transport if nobody else is available.
Ultimately, if you mean from like a legal standpoint, ultimately it's, Lincoln County Healthcare's responsibility to find transport for their patient down to Main Med. But and I'm not picking on any, but there's places, whether it be Brunswick or Augusta or Rockland, fire departments provide EMS. Oftentimes they don't do anything other than critical transfers out of their ER. So the mundane or the standard transfer of somebody who's sick but not unstable or acutely ill, that transfer isn't done. It waits for an ambulance service like Northeast or Waldeboro sometimes goes to Penn Bay, or whoever else. Boothbay sometimes goes to Mid Coast, wherever those hospitals get their transport from. So it's not unprecedented for a service to necessarily say they won't do anything other than acute transfers or of their own residents. But again, it's a slippery slope. You would be throwing a very large monkey wrench into the system that Miles has used for 50 years or more.
We got a monkey wrench coming at us too. So,
yeah, like I said, you're my boss, but
and I guess if I'm glad you're there to provide that service. I don't have, there's no issues with that. We have to make sure we have to take care of our own too sometimes too.
I think you'd find stopping doing that would affect us. It'd probably affect us less than you'd think as far as burnout, because again, we currently either are owned by or are contracted by 9 towns, which is a large percentage of what goes into Miles. Boothbay and Waldeboro both transport half of their residents to other hospitals. So a large portion of the transfers out of Miles are our residents. So I'd be very hesitant to, pull in and only do our residents, because we do need their help at times. And quite frankly, doing transfers of their residents at times can bring extra income that help offset the cost to our current town. So you'd really need to look at the number of transfers we do of those residents, which is, as we talked about at the meeting, there's no easy way to do that report, because the MEFRS doesn't really allow for, you took a transfer of a patient and where do they live? And if somebody, because you have to start doing the math. Well, if I live in Bristol, if I crashed in Waldeboro and Waldeboro brought me in, technically I'm their patient because I transported them, but I'm a resident of Bristol. How do you draw that line? It's convoluted. And right now, as it works with most of the ambulance services in the county, we have a great working relationship and we cover each other's backs. And I'd be hesitant to not continue providing that, especially in a way that helps offset the cost to our taxpayers and provides a service to folks that need it, and they're in a hospital that's in Damariscotta. So, there's one of your services from your service center.
And the other question I had, just for Well, I guess it's just an observation for a couple other towns when they do doing some arguing. We had, so far this year, we've had 86 no transports. No patient presented is 21 and canceled is 8. And you look at South Bristol, they have 0 canceled, 1 patient, no patient presented, and 9 no transport. So, I mean,
20% of their calls were
what,
non-billable runs, if you will.
right. So, and then if you look at what ours are, I mean, that's 107, like 115 calls so far. No patient's been transported out of our current 380, whatever, 89.
Like I said, I would encourage you folks, because everybody feels passionate about the formula, to be there for that discussion, or if a few of you can get the general consensus from the board and bring it to the argument, because every time there's an increase to our budget, last year, like I said, it was a small bump, but it was percentage wise not majorly significant. But 2 years ago, the first year that I got to do a budget was a huge conversation. And every time substantial increases come up, the formula comes under fire. And
Yeah, and I guess
I would love to settle that conversation once for all, perhaps, and get as many selectmen from each town at a meeting and have you folks hammer it out with your votes and come down to something that's a little more permanent, perhaps, which this has been the formula for as long as
right.
I've been involved. So that hasn't changed, but it does come under fire regularly, I guess is what I'll say.
So I will say the communication, I've been around sitting up here for on and off for quite a few years. The communication with the ambulance service the last 2 years has increased 100% and more. We never had any communication. We were pretty much left out of the loop, and that's our own fault because we kind of took it for granted, and here we are. But I appreciate including everybody and getting us all the information. That makes a big help, and starting early on the budget. And your meeting was well attended, the last preliminary meeting, and I'm sure this next one will be
even more
attended. So
yes.
When's the next meeting?
Next Monday, the 25th.
Monday, okay. Yeah.
6 p.m.
So if more than 2 of you are going to go to that meeting, let me know. Or why don't you let me know if you're planning on going, and then, well, definitely Tom's going to go because he's the representative.
Tom is a rep.
I was going to go as the alternate.
So if anyone else is going, we need to just notify Evan.
You might be
that it's
going,
a selectmen's meeting as well.
Okay.
So I might be leaving here in a minute.
Yeah, let's see what your call is there. Oh. Yeah. Oh.
Residents across from 131 Bristol Road, calling for some sort of fire next to the garage.
Yeah, he can handle it. He'll be there in a second.
Are there any other questions or comments for Nick from the board?
No, appreciate what you do.
I say, we appreciate everything, you guys. It was hard work.
Like I said, if there's ever information you folks want, just ask. We're an open book.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll echo Josh here. Yeah, this is, it's great having everything, and it's very transparent. So thank you.
Good presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
I'll see you Monday.
Yes, you will.
Yeah. All right. Our next presentation just went out the door to a fire call.
He'll be back.
So we'll give him a few minutes. So we can move him back. Are there any citizens comments or general correspondence this evening?
Hey, Historical Society.
Oh, come on up. Come on up. Introduce yourself.
I'm Valerie Seibel,
Hey,
and
Valerie, yeah.
I'm president of the society, and this is Ann Pinkham. She's a member of our planning committee. So we're here tonight on just a little bit of short notice, and unfortunately, I don't have any information to hand out, but we just want to talk a little bit about the Historical Society, because over the past year, we've really made a big effort to revitalize it and become a more visible presence in the town. We think it's really important, and we've had tremendous support from the townspeople. Everybody's excited about it. And so we've looked at several sites. We've kind of made the decision to bite the bullet and really look for a permanent headquarters, which we've never had. So we've looked at 3 or 4 different sites, and we just recently have come upon one that it's not a done deal yet, but we are hoping that that is going to come to fruition and we'll have a permanent place for the society. And when that happens, we'll be able to do so much more for the community. And we have adopted a new motto, which is sharing our heritage with community and friends, because we want to get not only just the community, but visitors and, people from outside the community alike to participate and see what a great organization we are. So we have a lot of things planned. As Matt knows, we take care of the cemeteries. We do programs in informational programs and educational programs. We want to do a lot more of that with schools and stuff. And we also want to integrate more with some of the other societies like Bristol and Noblesboro and other Lincoln County societies, because so many small ones, can't do a big presentation. You just don't have the wherewithal. So if we can combine efforts, that will be a big thing. And I've been in touch with Bristol Society and Noblesboro and Waldoboro. So everybody seems to be on board with that. And so we're here tonight to see about getting support from our town, because we feel that this is an important part of the town. And we're also getting involved in the park, the Riverside Park. We want to be represented there because there's talk about having an historical representation there. So we want to do more of that sort of thing. We give a scholarship every year. So there are a lot of things that we've been doing, but we're going to do more. And we're going to do more, make more of an effort to get the entire community involved. And this building that we're looking at, this site, meets almost all our requirements that we had. It's in town, it would be walkable. There's space for offices and small gatherings, not big meetings, but small gatherings, and place to have all our documents, which now are being stored here at the town office. So nobody gets a chance to look at a lot of our historical documents and artifacts. So we'll have room for storage, room for displays, and maybe even possibly room to rent an office so we have a little bit of an income stream. So it's a real positive. It's a real positive for us. And so we're in the process of getting our funds together and strategizing a capital campaign. But because it is such a community effort and it's so beneficial to the entire community, we do feel that it would be nice to have a little financial support from the town. So we're here, I guess, as a provider agency. Is that correct? Is that where?
Would we be considered a provider agency and have to go through all the steps of obtaining signatures? That's one of the questions, right?
So you haven't received anything from the town before?
Well, no, we haven't ever.
But the society has supported all the Damascotta cemeteries. So, I mean, there's a lot, that.
And we'll do more, it really is, it's kind of like the library. We're going to be providing a lot of community services, like a place to do research, genealogical, along with the library. We can, I've contacted the Lincoln County Historical, and they're excited about doing some educational programs with us because Louise Miller is the director of the educational part of Lincoln County Historical. So she said she'd be happy to work with us, maybe doing some stuff with Great Salt Bay and that sort of thing. So not only are we going to be a resource for historical stuff, but we really wanted to try to reach out into, schools. We could go to some of the elder facilities like Hodgson Green and do presentations there and have talks at our new place. If that comes together, we could have Calvin Dodge, our historian, come and talk, various other people in town that would make certainly interesting conversation. So I do see once we get the place, a lot of things will be able to come together.
Yeah.
So we're pretty excited about it, and everybody we've talked to has been very happy for us. And, you know, geez, I really hope you get it. We're real supportive of it. So I do think it's really would be a great thing for the town. And I think that it's certainly worthy of some support from the town.
So do you have a forecast, a budget for doing all these things?
Well, we have kind of a prospective budget because we've been working out of our own home. So we've been trying to say, okay, now if we get this place, what are we looking at? So we're thinking, you know, we have insurance costs of projected $3,600, fuel, $3,100, electricity, $2,400. So essentially all that 22 projected is $25,000, but that includes the interest payment on the loan for the property. And the bank has been really quite nice because they say for the first 12 months, all we have to do is pay the interest on the loan while we have our capital campaign. So that's been really helpful. So that is added into the projected costs.
And do you have an idea or a goal for how much you expect to get through the capital program?
We are hoping for 400,000 with our capital campaign. That's going to be our target.
And so what is your total budget for the year for next year?
For expenses?
Yeah.
Well, our projected expenses, including that interest payment, is $25,740.
Okay.
And that includes like $5,000 for general maintenance,
Right.
snow plowing, that sort of thing.
And you expect to raise $400,000?
That's our goal.
That's going to carry you for a while then, based on the 25,000.
Well, we've got to
It's
pay
over
the,
5 years, too.
yeah.
Right. Go ahead.
So we're hoping to pay off our mortgage with that and leave some operating capital. left
So the
over.
big chunk of that will be buying
Purchasing,
this
yes,
building.
exactly.
So get this
Yes,
building paid for so
exactly.
that we can have this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we will need some, you know, we have to raise all our money. It's an all volunteer group. So we have to raise all our money for our maintenance and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And programs, a lot of the programs now we used to do for free, but I've talked to 2 or 3 other historical societies and everybody's on the same page that nobody's really able to do that anymore. So when you have a program, you have to charge some sort of fee because we have to pay for the heat and lights of whatever facility we're at. A lot of the programs you have to pay, for instance, for historical New England, you have to pay for the speaker and you have to pay for their travel expense. So the programs aren't without costs. So
How much were you thinking of asking of the town?
we were thinking of asking $7,500. Because it is so, it's community oriented. It's not just a segment of the population. Not only is it community, but it's visitors as well.
Valerie, is the society looking at like this as an annual, you know, a budgeted line item?
We would,
for-
yes, we'd like that.
Voters approve.
And we have had some really good feedback from everyone we've talked to.
And how does that, the provider agency side, do they have to go through that? Is that how that would work? Or
So up until last year, and
Yeah,
I
and
can
it's on
list
the-
those provider agencies for you that we currently have. Coastal Kids. Let's see, we have, New Hope for Women, Coastal Kids Preschool, Midcoast Maine Community Action, Spectrum Generations, and Healthy Kids. And they get anywhere between $1,320 and $1,320 per year and $2,662 a year. And then you have the library, which years ago, the board decided and the town meeting decided that that should be considered a municipal operation. So the Scanumpa Library is not a community organization. You budget for that, or it's not a provider organization.
Mhm.
And the same with Lincoln County Television. They're an outside organization that gets a stipend from the town without having to go through the provider agency process. So we've got a contingency account, which is relatively small, and we've already spent over a third of that.
So we've been
this
using,
year.
but yeah,
So there's not a lot of latitude in this year's budget. I think the board will need to decide whether to ask the Board of Selectmen and then, the Budget Committee, and then ultimately the town meeting, whether, you wanted to just add this to the budget, add this expense to the general fund budget, or whether you want to let the Historical Society know that they should go through the provider agency process. And the reason they're here tonight is because most of the signatures collected on the petitions for the provider agencies are done at election time. All the organizations set up their tables out front. So those are the choices essentially. Is you either say, we'll try to get it approved as part of the budget without you being a provider agency, or you need to follow the process, the petition process that is required of provider agencies.
And how complicated is that?
It's, I think the most arduous part of that is getting the signatures.
123.
10% of,
Oh, okay.
it's 10% of the number of voters in the last gubernatorial election.
Yeah,
So
getting rid
last
of
year,
that,
and
yeah.
probably it would be the same this year since we haven't had a gubernatorial election
Yeah.
in between, was 116 signatures.
And how much is left in the contingency budget for this year?
It's less than 10,000.
Not much.
Most of the money, let's see, you've spent about 5,400 so far, most of which was which is committed to LCTV.
I don't know. I suggest having the budget committee look into it. I didn't know, anybody else on the board have any thoughts on it?
Well, I guess my only concern is that, over the time, like for the library, they used to get the signatures and we kind of morphed it into our budget. But I guess, as the beginning stages of this is happening, I guess my thought would be to do the petition
Right.
and get the signatures and get the ball rolling. And then you might get some more input and some more volunteers that way as well. So,
Well, and I think it'd be good publicity, even if we had to go around to individuals' homes on
Yeah.
the street.
Let people know.
get the word, that will help to
Right.
get the word out.
That's how
but,
I look at it.
and
Might
then,
actually get a few signatures up here.
So-
We'll
It's
be after
ready.
you.
It's ready.
Your capital campaign, that
word
will
out.
Yes.
get the word out.
Right.
so
Yes,
I
right.
guess that's my feeling is, only one of four here tonight, is to do the petition process and get the ball rolling that way. And then the people will tell us that they want to do it and or not, and we can go from there.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan to me.
Well,
So yeah, if you
we'll
guys,
go for
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a great plan to, get the word out there and yeah, it's
So what
worth-
is-
worthwhile cause.
We don't, it's not due until next April.
Yeah.
So we have a long period of time. So the whole thing we can meld into the capital campaign and obtaining signatures and doing all this.
Get the PR out there.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to hear you get a permanent home here at some
Well,
point.
I
before
say,
you-
it's
We
not
hope
as
so.
Knock on
We
wood,
hope.
but
We hope.
yeah, you've been floating around everywhere for a
Yeah,
while.
it's true.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's time
A
to,
lot of stuff
Town with a
in
rich
people's
history. It'd be
homes.
nice to
yeah,
get
it-
into one spot.
it'll be great to
Yeah.
have it all.
Where is
in
it
one
located and how long is it going to stay?
spot. Where is the property located?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not supposed to tell quite yet, because it's
Oh, all
not a
right.
done
So
Evan,
deal.
it's a
Evan,
secret.
put everything down.
It's a secret.
Pause it.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have any possibility of losing it? I mean, do you have some
No.
kind of, no?
No, I
It's just
think it's
Until,
pretty.
until it's firm and there's
Yeah.
a signature and
Yeah. But
just.
Currently, it's all over the place, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's all in
It's
our
not,
living rooms. and
yeah, it's not
kitchens, but-
accessible. It's not,
Right.
yeah. Yeah,
Be good.
so, Yeah, it'd be good to change that, though.
Okay, well, we'll do the
All right.
petition.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
guys.
Becky Bartolotta, if you call tomorrow, she can get you the paperwork for the petition.
I already have the petition made out. I got it
There we
last
go.
week.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
Thank you.
For listening.
All right. We're going to back up. We've got our presenter back here.
Do you want to take the public comments?
We-
or do you want to get the-
We can, we had,
Okay,
yeah,
well, what John's going to give a
John, do you want to
quick
do your-
presentation on the. It was.
But we had to-
Yeah.
we had to skip his presentation, you see. Ran out for a call there, so
And I left my notebook in the car, so
you can wing it.
so I guess for the purpose of this conversation, I'm John Roberts, member of the Villages Light Committee and part of the Chamber Board. So we had our first Villages of Light Committee meeting, and we were really trying to figure out how to navigate this year, and we decided that we're going to try to go back to what it was a couple of years ago. We'd really like to do a parade.
Mhm.
The last parade in town was a Villages of Light parade, so we felt we should go back to lead us back into coming back to normal.
Yep.
We're going to meet with this Newcastle Selectmen as well, but we'd be looking at the customary parade route starting on Mills Road in Newcastle and finishing at the First Baptist Church. We kind of figured that people that wanted to come will come. People that don't want to come won't come. We typically do everything on the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Another town has decided to do a parade of fire trucks that night, and coupled with not being able to be in Lincoln Theater and wanting to do the outside drive-in movie, we're gonna ask to do the parade on Friday and then the movie on Saturday. The movie, we're looking to do the same thing we did last year and use the Rennie's parking lot on
Rennie's
US Route
warehouse.
1. And we're gonna show the Polar Express.
What's the date that Friday? It's a Friday after Thanksgiving,
Friday after
right?
Thanksgiving, yes. 20-something of November.
Yeah.
I had it in my notebook, which I
That's-
left in the car. And my
This
haste to
calendar
come
going
back
over
in.
there. Yeah.
It would be November.
Friday,
So-
day
so
after
Is
Thanksgiving.
that the 25th? I mean, the Thanksgiving's on the 25th this year, so 26th? Does that sound right?
Somewhere in there.
26, 27.
Yes.
yeah.
I'm all
26,
good
After
with
27.
Thanksgiving, yeah. It sounds great. We'll get the parade back, and that's been a,
And the other, I guess the other piece of the ask is to do the small trees like we've done on Main Street.
Mhm.
We've lined up the same, same sort of provider that we've had with those. And then we had kind of a scare with the tree at the Chapman Hall House, so I'd prefer not to have one there, and thought that tying in well with a discussion that's going to be in a little bit, we'd like to do one right by the flagpole at the Information Bureau instead. If that is town property right now, or hopefully will be by the time this comes around.
Yeah, the flagpole is town property, and hopefully the rest of the the site will be town property soon.
So
A flagpole.
So we thought it would be, kind of a good way to also kick off our campaign for the chamber and have one of the big trees
Perfect.
there. So we've lined up 3 big trees, and we're shooting for the same locations we've had before, but we haven't had all those conversations yet. So other than that, I think that's kind of the synopsis of what we're trying to do. We did not have good results with the stationary parade last year, so that's why we're not pursuing it this year. We're going for a regular one. So
What is the time on the parade? Just so you can
I
tell.
believe
folks.
it would, I think 4:30. I'd have to look at, we usually try to coincide the start with sunset. So I'd have to look at it somewhere around
early
4:30.
evening. Yep.
Usually we can see pretty well until we get to the end of Mills Road, and then the streetlights help after that, so.
Oh, that sounds great. No objections here. Nope. Anything else?
I think it's good.
Thumbs
do
up.
it.
Sounds like.
Good. That was easy. I wasn't asking for money, so.
Tim, it's a lot easier. Matt, there's no update on the official action for the Information Bureau while John is here. Or is there?
Under official actions?
Yeah, but for the.
You're just.
Oh, on the,
Preliminary.
Property
Yeah, I
transfer?
can, well, I can give you an update on that. John, I keep John and Jim Gallagher in the loop on this all the time. Most recently, I basically ask our contacts at the state weekly where they are, because they promised it 3 weeks ago. But we should be getting an agreement, a land transfer agreement very soon. And what I was going to mention under official action items is I'm going to be asking you to set up interviews with assessor or assessing firm candidates here in the next week. We could have a special board meeting if that a lease agreement or that it's not a lease agreement, transfer agreement comes in.
Mhm.
And Jim Gallagher has already drafted the lease agreement. So we can do like a 1-2 right after one another. And so I guess this goes down to the item I had below, and that is, would you like to have a special meeting a week from tonight? So we could schedule that.
See why not? I don't.
If everything,
Yeah, and that's assuming
and then we
get
can
the agreement. Yeah,
sign it if it does come in.
Yep.
Or we can have a a special meeting during the day if we need to
Yeah.
get this thing
yeah.
going.
I'd like to, I know John would like to move that along
Yeah,
as
yeah.
quickly as we can.
Oh, we would for him, yeah, as soon as it,
Yeah.
As soon as it comes available, we'll
Yep.
we'll do it.
Okay.
as soon as it
Okay.
comes, yeah.
Yeah.
So Matt, was there any problems with starting with the tree removal that you ran into over on that topic?
Problems with what? I'm sorry.
With having the trees removed around the property now, or should we wait? Because the DOT said they were all set with it.
Oh, the trees? No, they said we could move ahead on that. Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're pretty confident that
We have that in writing.
that this is all going to happen. It's just getting the legal
I'll just take him.
department
Take him down.
to finalize it. So they told me they were going to have an agreement for me on Friday. So I think it's in draft form somewhere bouncing around their offices. So, but as far as trees and the driveway permit, we can move ahead on that. I think I'm just waiting on you for a piece of information for that driveway permit.
Thank you all for your
We'll
support.
move it along as soon as we get it, yeah.
It's gonna start, you're gonna start seeing some changes here pretty quick. So
You start your campaign and.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Thank you. All right. There's no citizen, oh, wait.
Wow, Julie's here. to have citizen comment.
We've got one more presentation.
Okay.
Come on up and introduce yourself.
So I'm Julie Kaiser, 42 Oyster Creek Lane, and I just want to be very specific. These are comments as being a resident of the town of Damariscotta and not the town manager of the town of Waldeboro, although I do have some comments under that hat. But this is, two things have made me happy, and I wanted to share them. I called Public Works because there was a pothole. And when I pull out and my neighbors pull out of our lane and we look to the right, we're on Belvedere and right around that bridge. And it needed to be cut back. So I called on a Thursday. And by the time I got home Friday at lunchtime around 12:30, it was done. And it was just nice to see it done. And the other thing we've been noticing is there's a police presence lately on Belvedere. And we do have a lot of people who like to go a little fast, and that's just nice. And that wasn't even something that was asked for. So I just wanted to say that was nice. Now I'm going to put on my town of Waldeboro manager hat. One of the things that I think we have a responsibility to do when it comes to EMS is the county has ARPA funding. They've got $7.6 million. And I don't know how many of you attended the Lincoln County planning sessions, but there's a lot of towns screaming for broadband and everybody has a project. And how Lincoln County is going to divide that up, I don't know. But EMS touches every one of our lives. So that funding, and I wrote to them and specifically asked for some type of training. This personnel shortage isn't new. It is somewhat COVID driven. It is somewhat vaccination driven. Doesn't matter to me, but this existed. We need to address it. And, there's 4 service providers in Lincoln County. And I know it gets complicated because them are municipal, but we need to save lives. We need trained people to save lives. And that would be a use of money that the county could put forward that would benefit every single community in Lincoln County. And I understand everybody wants to hear their special projects. I was an advocate at that meeting for sometimes I feel like I'm yelling at the top of my lungs, danger, danger, Will Robinson, this is a problem. It is a problem. So I just think if there is a way that you could reach out and lend your support to possibly putting some money aside to train and recruit people in Lincoln County, that would be helpful, whether they're EMTs or if it's even an EMT moving up to a medic. I think it's important. We're only going to get older. And I just want to say one other thing about CLC. I also employ a lot of the people who work at CLC. So I work with these individuals on a daily basis. I see them, I see what they do, I hear what they do. I am an advocate for our unseen angels. These people save lives. And they could make more delivering packages than patients. These people give you life-saving drugs. And believe me, I know I had a very difficult discussion last week with my select board and my budget committee. And we went round and round on it. It's going to force us to have some serious discussion in our town about what services to provide going forward, what we want to focus on. But I can't speak more highly about the EMTs and the paramedics that serve our region. And I use our region as this peninsula and Waldoboro. They are some of the finest individuals you will ever meet, and they really are everyday heroes walking around. So
now I got a question for you. Do
Sure.
you see that training as all of Lincoln County coming together so that?
I see Lincoln County being, even if it's the lead agency, is putting aside some type of money to fund training for let's recruit and train EMTs and or paramedics in Lincoln County to stay in Lincoln County. It should be a career. And we have to start looking at it. Nick was absolutely 100% right when he sat here and said, we need to move to more of a career-oriented service. And believe me, I'm getting heat from Jefferson. I sent them a bill. They're not happy. And I understand that, but we're going from a model that always, like he said, was either volunteer or if we need money, we'll pull an extra shift someplace else. And that's not sustainable. This is a career. And we've had to make that move too. And our increase, I don't know if it makes any of you feel any better. Our increases are similar because we've had to do this. I could lose somebody to UPS, and I just don't want to, my thing, especially because it is a municipal service, I never want to have to say to a resident, we couldn't answer a call. I'm sorry. We couldn't save a life. That's what keeps me up at night. That's what's kept me up at night all summer. And I get your point about transfers. But at the same token, they are where you do make money with transfers. And I do think too, that Lincoln, especially Miles, does base when they call on the acuity of the call. So I think it's kind of out of our hands at that point. I will share with you though, that, we do get calls from Penn Bay because we're pretty much half and half, go either way. But, we're getting calls to do transfers to Bar Harbor, and we have to turn those down because
Yeah.
we can't be out of that. We can't be out of range, but Waldeboro has an amazing working relationship with CLC. And I can't speak more highly about them. And as a resident now, I'm taking that hat off, back to the resident hat. When we decided to buy a house, we looked at the towns that provided emergency services, and it was very important for us to get police, fire, and EMS. So if there's anything we can ever do for you, or if you ever need anything, just please ask. And we continue to look forward to working with CLC. And I also should mention that the 4 services did have a meeting, and that I will give a lot of credit to Nick. He set that up so the 4 services could have an open and frank conversation. So that really speaks highly to the leadership that you have at CLC. That's all.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Is that it for citizens' comments and correspondence? Matt, nothing
I
on
don't have
the,
any written correspondence to share with
Yeah.
you.
all right, well, we can move on to your town managers items here.
Okay. Yeah, I was just maybe doing, want to bring something up that was already talked about. So, yeah, on the American Rescue Plan funding, as Julie mentioned, we've got, as a county, 6.7 million. And I talked to Mary Ellen Barnes Friday, and they still hadn't made any final decisions on that, although their task force is coming up with some recommendations.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it'll be a mix of items. But we have money, just like Waldeboro, we have some money in town, much, much smaller than what the county has access to. We've received about 133,000 of that. And we've heard from a Stepping Stone to put some of that money into a tiny house for a homeless person. We've talked about as a board using some for storm drainage, and we've got a couple candidates for that. Another item that's come up is making some type of contribution toward broadband. Although, we're talking well into 6 figures and probably 7 figures for that. So it's there's not much the town can do in terms of making a dent in that arena. And then one item that I didn't have on my initial list that I shared with the board, but the other towns in the area are pursuing this, is a bonus for employees that were involved in some way or another in the pandemic situation, either on a emergency basis or otherwise. So I think I'm not sure how best to proceed with that. I could do more survey work to see what some of the other towns are doing. It's just one area that I don't want to have Damascotta be the only one that doesn't provide some sort of bonus for its employees. We have quite a few. We include the employees that work for the Massasoit Fire Engine Company. We've got quite a few people to provide bonuses to, but that's just something I want to put on the table, and maybe the board can think of some ideas on how that recognition would be given, or whether ARPA funds would be used for that.
Can we get a list of all the items that we think we might consider for allocation, like you mentioned, stuff?
Yeah, and those, I just listed them for you, but
Right.
I have kept a running list. I'm not sure if I sent that to you yet, but I can do that. Now, we only have half the funds now. And Cheryl tells me it's going to be another year before we get the other half. So we've got 133. And according to the latest guidance from MMA, who reviewed the guidance from the federal government, we need to get town meeting approval. So we would have a special town meeting to authorize the allocation once the board makes
Right. But some of it,
decisions. Yeah,
I think at least Stepping Stone had an allocate, they had a request, didn't they?
they had a request of
So maybe-
approximately 16,000.
Yeah, maybe if we can get a list of the items and then the requests, if there are any, so we can all look at them. And
Yeah. So that's it on that item, but it was related to something Julie brought up, so I wanted to continue that. We need some direction, or I need some direction on the infrastructure bond issue. You know, that's come up a couple times in your work plan, and I promised we'd move forward on that. We didn't discuss the details during the goal setting workshop, so I wanted to ask the board, do you want to proceed with getting some consultant assistance on identifying the cost of the various projects? And then, well, I guess backing up even further, do you want to use the Public Works Committee's recommendations for those major projects? And then, you know, there's a whole host of decisions that need to be made, you know, how much we want to do for the bond issue, you know, and what projects do we want to limit it to road projects? Did you want to add sidewalk projects into that sort of thing? So I'm just looking to the board for some direction on that. I had sent this out to the Public Works Committee and then shared it with the board. But Josh just mentioned that there was an error in the list. Back Meadow was milled and overlaid, or at least overlaid.
It was overlaid.
Just before I arrived on the scene.
But it was shimmed. You know, it was tacked, shimmed, and then paved.
Yep.
That's why that road is holding up so well.
Yep.
Even though you got to pay more money for some of that, it lasts a lot longer.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the
Getting
level
back-
of. Go ahead.
Sorry, I think when you jumped ahead, getting back to the bond issue, it would be nice to have a list of the projects that we have as far as we're doing a lot of engineering on these different projects. If we had some projections of, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on our wish list, we got an idea of if we were to look at a bond or how much to look at a bond, you know, what we would be looking at.
And Mark, I think what we, at the Public Works Committee, when we decided, we kind of do our yearly evaluation, and Belvedere and Egypt were the two roads that we wanted to do. And we've been holding off for years because we wanted to pay off our debt service before we went into another bond issue to get that paid off, and that's paid off now.
We
isn't it?
paid it off
Today.
this month.
This
Yeah,
month, so.
October.
That's what, I think our debt service, we've budgeted was what, 120 a year or something?
Yeah, it was 125, and now it's we just have the street light conversion, which was about $5,000.
So we were looking into,
So we have
trying not to increase taxes, but just, you know, that budget, that line item would be going towards the payment for some of the
We
infrastructure.
also have a considerable project for Mile Street
Yes.
is,
And then,
you know, looking at
but also, you know, we've got money that's coming in from the hospital that we've already budgeted for that project. So we're just scaling that project back.
scaling it back, or,
So, and then now we're adding in potential to do Church Street. So that's another project, but talking with Scott, I know Scott had talked from Water District about putting in a grant for funds for that project on their end to replace that water line on Church Street. That hasn't been replaced yet. So we could piggyback on that to do some of that.
This list is really
Indeed.
vast and it includes items that are considered for 23 or whatever. Would it be helpful to list or put priorities on this from the Public Works view, and also rough, if there's any rough idea of what's already allocated or what the estimate would be to do these?
Well, I think we've been kicking this can down the road because we've been taking money to try to stay up with a sidewalks infrastructure. So we've kind of skipped a little bit of really, what does Waldeboro spend on their paving?
$500,000 a year.
So we've always gone like 100,000.
Well, we probably got a fifth of the roads or less than
Yeah.
Waldeboro,
Mhm.
but yeah, probably much less.
The
Yeah.
only thing I would say is if you're going to bond, do it shortly.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we're in for
Mhm.
interest rates to go up.
So we need a,
And then I
Sorry,
guess
go ahead.
that's the point is by having this list, we should really look at, we're doing justice for the townspeople if we put this together and get that interest rate at.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I know, and that's why I'm asking the board this evening for your direction on what you want the next step to be, because I don't want to, as you say, kick the can down the road. Do you want us to hire a consultant to come in and give us some prices on these major improvements and maybe some options, rebuilding the road versus the mill and overlay? And to answer Tom's point, we're talking Egypt, the major roads. The others, we're building up reserves. We have paid for them in the past. Most of our, as you know, most of the sidewalk money has been grant money. But we've got Egypt, a Belvedere, and Church, essentially.
Mhm.
Those are the roads
Major.
that are going to cost some big bucks.
we need to know what they're
Well,
gonna
as I
cost
said-
and
as
how
I
much
said,
we bond for.
For somebody who's a layman in this regard, this list is a little overwhelming. If we could get it down to the ones that we really think near term we're gonna have to deal with and what the costs
yeah,
are.
so-
Those are the ones I just listed.
Oh, I know.
This is the survey that
Yeah.
the Public Works Committee does every year. So we list just about every street in town.
So isn't there money in the Public Works budget, Matt, for engineering services in regards to some of this?
Some, not very much.
Right.
Yeah. But if you can let me know what you'd like to do in way of, would you like an engineering firm to come in? I know in the
I don't-
past you've had a contractor.
We've had contractors before and they come in and, they're doing it every day. But the only bad part about it is once they give us a number, sometimes it becomes public record when it probably shouldn't be. If we could just get rough estimates that, so we
Okay.
can get ready to bond, So
Yeah.
if we could get some numbers, that would be great.
Okay.
Whether you talk to two different contractors or whatnot.
Consultants?
Yeah, or engineer, but
Okay.
I know engineering estimates have been way off. Usually someone in the construction industry is a lot closer.
Well, I
well-
think the numbers are out there that you could reach to,
Mhm.
and I'm sure that you've done this too, is reach out to what that rates are on certain things without spending a bunch of money.
Well, if we get the consultant or engineering involved, then we have to, where does that come out of the budget?
But I think,
Drainage, that's
I'd like to know from,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, we have you here on the hot seat again.
sorry to put you on.
Sorry,
that,
Matt.
Put you on the spot, that's okay. So I'll tell you what we do in Walden.
great.
I have a 42-year director of public, he knows how much a mile is. That's our estimate. You're gonna do 8 miles. He knows what it is. We put it in. And we've debated this too in our town of, historically Waldeboro always saved up and spent. And our budget committee got involved. I make our budget committee work very hard. And we really sat down, we had somebody come in. Do we save and tax people ahead of what they're receiving? We had the whole conversation. We looked at bonding. And we did, we restructured our debt last year. We didn't go with Maine Municipal, the bond bank. We went out on our own. So there's a bunch, but we tend to go with our public works director. I know he talks to a lot of different contractors. There's about 3 or 4 that he goes to. And I'm not big on engineering fees. Max will tell you, I'm always like, well, but your public works, I don't know him that well. I don't know.
well, the state has that information too.
The state also does have that information, but, feel free. I mean, if you would like, I'm sure John can share I'm offering up his services as a shared service.
Yeah.
So please don't,
Yeah.
charge me for transfers.
No.
But we'd be more than happy to help out with that if you needed any assistance with that.
Oh, that's generous of you. Thank
That'd be
you.
nice.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
Yeah,
And that's something we should also talk about is how can we share.
yeah.
Mhm.
I know recently I stole Stan. I'm sorry about that. But we do, we share a lot of information.
Yeah.
We'd be more than
Yeah.
happy to help any way we
Yeah.
can.
That'd be great.
But that's my knowledge.
Yeah, we know we want to shim it. We know we want to do a base and a final coat. So I don't know if we really have to reinvent the wheel on it.
But we can get those costs from them, which would be very helpful
Right.
outside of our area,
Mhm.
and then give us a number so that we can look at some of this. We know what the mileage is on it.
Mhm.
And then, put this stuff together because like she said, interest rates are going
Yeah.
up. And I've been saying right along that a bond is the way to go because interest rates are low and it will spread this payment out and it actually save the taxpayers money
Mhm.
because the price of everything's going to keep going
Right.
up as well.
We just don't know. Who knows what the future holds?
Did you get enough from us, Matt?
Is that? Connect our
Sorry,
public
Matt.
works. Yeah.
Shouldn't we look at it like the next 2 years instead of just the 1
Oh,
year?
this is going to take some time.
This is a 7-year cycle. We should be on a 7 or 8 year cycle on our roads.
In our capital plan, we look at a 5-year cycle, but yeah, depending on what you do with the roads, I hold this one out as the model. We had this one rebuilt and that's been quite a few years and that holds up.
Yeah.
But you look at the shim coat that the state does on Biskie or
Yeah.
Bristol. And I mean, that's gone in a few years, long before that 7-year cycle.
They try to get 5 years out of that. That's
Yeah.
just to please taxpayer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You you've gone over a wagon
Mhm.
trail.
But that's what we attempt to do with the annual survey as well as get an assessment of the condition. But what we're talking about now are items that, you can't put in your normal budget cycle. These, you're talking very expensive
Right.
projects with Belvedere, Egypt and church. Yeah.
This is the time to bond for it then and get it.
Okay. We'll look around and we'll get someone to give us some estimates. I'll come back to you with some numbers. And, Julie said, Waldeboro doesn't go to the bond bank. We wouldn't go to the bond bank. We've got 5 banks in town. So
Mhm.
we usually ask them for quotes.
Sounds good.
Which I'll bring up something a little off. On the back parking lot, you're talking 3 inches of hot top down there when residential was 3 inches. Concerned that we're not looking at that long term. So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I've got,
Get it when they get our.
I
60%
don't know
yeah.
when the back parking lot was last done, but I have pieces of the asphalt in my office so I can show people. It's 2 inches in places.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing it lasted as long as it did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need, the waterfront project plans include some major work down there. So, okay.
Julie, anything else? No.
Anything else, Julie? No.
It doesn't say, Damascotta town manager notes on here.
Okay.
Sorry, Matt.
So the additional cost for the waterfront project. This is a slight amendment to what we talked about last time. The grant that we asked for and received from EDA did not include park improvements except for, reestablishing the park after we dug it up for the wall. And the work that the consultant would do for the park would be in addition to what we've already allocated for them. So I had a conversation with the park architect that works for SLR, and we're looking at $145 an hour. for him to participate in a brainstorming session. I don't see the need for that. George Parker, as chair of the Waterfront Committee, and, you know, certainly a well-qualified architect and one that understands these types of things, is willing to lead that committee. My thought is we have a couple of Zoom call meetings with the group. Hopefully George comes up with or is able to achieve a consensus with the committee. We take that idea back to the board, this board, you take a look at it. If you're in agreement, then we turn it over to the park architect, and, you know, for a couple $1,000s, which we do have available in waterfront funds that aren't allocated to the local match, then we go forward with that. So, and then, you know, basically that park plan goes on the shelf until we're ready to pursue that, which is going to be later in the project, you know, after we get the drainage done, the parking lot reconstruction, and the pedestrian access completed. So does that sound okay?
Yeah.
That plan?
Fine
I
with
don't
that.
want to spend the money.
Is
on
George
the
okay with it?
park.
We asked George. Is George okay with it?
George is okay. He volunteered, and then I told him what we were going to do.
We'll just keep taking advantage of him. So thank you, George.
So yeah, he'd do that.
That's great.
Not as his work for us on the restroom and the waterfront committee, but as his chair.
Yeah.
But as chair of the waterfront project improvement committee. Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, I just wanted to run that by the board. I've shared with you the update on the American Rescue Plan. Just as has been tradition most years, Election Day is very busy around here. It will no doubt with the ballot issues that are coming up, it'll no doubt be busy. November, what is it, 2nd or 3rd? I can't remember, but I'm asking you if we could close down the administrative offices so that the 3 office workers can focus on the election, and I can stay out of the way.
That works.
Yeah, that's what they hope. They stay.
Thanks.
And then the interviews with the assessing firm, if I could, I'd like to contact them and set up some interviews. I was thinking a half-hour interview for each, starting at 4:30 to 5 to 5:30. We know their credentials already. I've sent those to you. And Jim Murphy has offered, and I've accepted his assistance
Oh, great.
in that
Yeah.
process. And I could come up with a list of questions based on our contacts on our listserv site.
Personally, I think it's a good idea to do them in person.
That's fine. Yeah, I can ask them when. You know, I'm not going to say where they're from, but it's a couple hour drive for at least one of them, but I can.
You reach out to him, see if that's
I can ask,
acceptable.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that's
And then,
certainly a valid issue. You're going to be working with this
Yeah.
person
Yeah,
hopefully for
yeah.
years. Yeah.
so we reach out to him and then let us know. We'll try to set him up as soon as
Yep.
we can. Yeah.
Yeah, and tentatively, can we look at a week from tonight?
Sure.
What is that?
That's the next
What's that?
Wednesday.
We're talking about having a special meeting anyway next week.
The 27th.
I have a meeting until about 5:30. So after that, it's fine.
That's
So
next
it's-
Wednesday. We could do it the next, next.
Or it doesn't have to
Doesn't
be on
matter.
Wednesday night either.
Yeah.
I haven't
Well,
seen
we'll
when
feel
they're
them out
available.
first because they may not be available
Okay.
anyway. So,
Yeah,
we'll see if that, but I think if we can be flexible and
and if it's
No,
gonna,
yeah.
Kenny, if it's gonna be live, they're gonna have to build in some transportation.
right,
time.
yeah. So it might be later anyway or something. So
Okay,
we can shoot
all
for,
right, I'll,
shoot for a week out, but see what they,
okay. I'll do
see
that.
what their
I'll
schedules are
follow
like.
up with them and then with you tomorrow.
thinking that.
And then the additional item is our lead reporter is leaving.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
no.
Says.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Last meeting, and we gotta say, and I've told him this before, I'm very sorry to hear that he's leaving. He's accurate and he's fair, whether, the article is positive or negative.
Yeah.
He lays it out the way it is. So I don't think you can ask for more in a reporter, so.
He's done a great
We
job.
will miss you,
Gil.
Evan.
Yes.
I'll miss you all too. It's been nice working with you.
Where are we headed, Evan? Yeah.
The Morning Sentinel in Waterville. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll
Well,
still be living here, so I look forward to coming and helping you as a resident.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we wish you
We'll
the
call the
best.
Morning Sentinel. We'll call them later.
Yeah. Have you done your background check
Yes,
yet?
yes, I don't know.
But
Well,
thank
thanks for all
you,
you.
thank you, Evan.
Yeah, thanks for your hard
thank
work.
Anytime we wanted something highlighted, we asked for it to be highlighted in the paper, and you've come through for us, so.
Yeah,
He's
well,
been-
I love this community. I really do. So, yeah.
Yeah,
it's been
you think?
great.
Been through a lot of, some mundane meetings and been there for everything and some exciting ones, but
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah, thanks a lot.
Would you have any comment on that?
Yep, sure.
Yeah. Come on up.
I was talking to the prospective reporter that will be taking over the Damerscott beat, and I'd like to introduce him at the next meeting, Matt, if that's okay
Sure.
with you.
Sure.
Definitely.
I'm gonna see if I can line the editor up to come and meet you at the same time, since
Great.
that's also a new position for us, so.
Okay, yeah.
And you're not the only one that's gonna miss Evan, so.
We already forgot his name.
Not even out the door and you're talking about his replacement. That's okay. We got to get that newspaper published. So,
He would have been here tonight, but he's currently covering Whitefield, so he's up in Whitefield tonight.
okay, all right. Sounds good. And, all right, that's all I had on my items.
All right. You move on to your official action items tonight, everybody. We're going to
You
table.
covered the,
Yeah, the first one,
That's still on
we'll table
hold.
that.
Yeah.
Yep. On your provider agency budget
Yeah,
request process.
so as I said earlier, the groups depend heavily on the crowd that comes through on election day. So we need to let them know
Yeah.
soon, like
Well, we just-
tomorrow,
I think we
whether.
just set the precedence on that with the historical
Yeah.
society
Yep.
this earlier.
Well,
Right.
Okay, so
Well,
just let me get clarification then. So do you want them to get signatures, go back to the signature process? I mean, they're in a little bit different category because they would be a new organization.
No,
But
yeah.
what you did last year because of the pandemic and the fact we didn't want, people going door to door or we want to minimize one-on-one contact. You had allowed them to be listed on the warrant without
Carry them over.
having to go through the petition process. And you limited the amount to the previous year's request.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you want to continue that? Or I guess what I'm hearing is no, that you want them to get the signatures and go through
Let's see.
the process. So we
Back
had
to the-
I'd
prior
like
to
to go
COVID.
back to the process.
Okay.
Back to the standard procedure. Yeah. Yeah, that's anybody else weigh in on that? Are you guys all good with that or?
I'm good with it.
I'm okay with it.
You want to probably put that in the form of them.
I'll make a motion that we go back to the signature process for petitions for provider agencies to be added to the warrant for the town meeting. for funding.
Tom seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor? All right, motion carries. All right. And we're going to move on the comprehensive list, Matt. Yeah, that's
Comprehensive,
next.
I sent out the
Get a chance
list
to-
of volunteers and I have from the town administration standpoint, don't have any issues with any of them, any qualms about having any of these folks appointed.
Yeah, that's a good
And
list.
I'd even recommend Julie Kaiser if she's willing to.
Can we,
Not too much.
We just-
Rare. I didn't have anything to do tonight.
we just write her in? Yeah, so,
So the list is, I mean, the list
Yeah,
of folks,
yeah,
or if you want
for
to, okay, Jenny Bagan, Ann Pinkham.
Wow.
You're on the comprehensive plan.
I
Yeah, you are.
You are.
You are now.
Oh, we were on the land use committee. You were attending the land use committee meeting when Bob said, how many of you want to be on the comp plan? So
point for it.
we're not
Train's
taking
coming.
we're not taking any withdrawals.
Yeah.
Rachel Batchelder, Muffy Miles, Shari Sage, I'm sorry, Derek Weber, Valerie Matters, Sarah Gladue, and Max Johnstone.
See, Max is on it,
Max
so
is on there,
everybody
so.
ought to be on that committee.
Well,
And then we want to keep it a little bit open-ended because as Bob and I discussed this, there's a lot of work for this committee, and if we had a few more volunteers,
okay.
it would be good. So
Yeah, it's good.
Yes, we need to,
at least
yeah.
this will get us started if you agree with this list.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to appoint to the comprehensive plan committee, the aforementioned list. So I'm not gonna go through them all again.
I'll second it.
Mark seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
I'm gonna abstain.
Mark, Josh
I don't,
abstains.
I want a
yeah.
Christmas present, birthday presents.
Yeah, she didn't know she was on it, so you're in trouble when you get home. Oh,
And then I was hoping, because we usually have this in October, I was hoping that we could have a contract where you review for fuel oil and a contract for propane, but we don't yet. So we'll have that for your November meeting.
Okay. All right.
That's all.
Yeah, Lou's not here, so. All right, thank you, Matt. We'll go on to some selectmen's discussion items. Start down here with Tom. You have anything to?
No, I don't
Add
have
to the
anything to add. Nothing tonight.
All right. Mark?
I just got the American flags that are hanging on the telephone poles that are all shredded, and I don't know who took care of that. Do you know, John?
Legion, and was
Legion,
supposed to
right?
take him down Sunday.
Oh, is that good?
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Yeah, Matt and I discussed the one downtown there that I
Yeah.
didn't notice it the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
day.
the
but
ones
yeah,
on, some of the ones on Main Street are looking pretty
yeah,
ratty, so.
yeah.
We
try
to make it to Veterans Day.
Yeah,
We're not.
Yeah.
We're not gonna make it.
yeah, traditionally Memorial Day to Veterans Day, but been a windy
The winds
year.
are picking
Yeah.
up.
Isn't it? Well, yeah. All right. Josh, anything down your end?
I think this ends quiet tonight.
Okay, yeah, yeah, I will be too, so we can move on to a couple workshops, so, yeah. All right, do I hear,
I'll make a motion, we adjourn and go into a workshop with the town planner
And the police chief.
and the police chief.
I'll second. All those in favor? All right. Into the workshops we
So
go.
do you need a break or you just want to roll right?
Power
into it?
through. I think chief ought to go first.
We're
He
going
should see it
up.
first.
Front and center here.
Keep the TV going.
So let me give an intro while Bob's coming up. I've been sharing with you the planning board minutes and the draft ordinances as the planning board has gone through the ordinances. And I thought it'd be good, though, not just for the board's benefit, but probably even more for the people that watch the YouTube channel at home, to summarize, what we've got in the works, because they are significant changes from what we have. And, I think I'd like to get the community discussing these, and then, of course, you'll have a public hearing before they go to a town meeting. So this is at my instigation that Bob's here, because I think it's important to give these some publicity.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Thank you, yeah. It's hard to sometimes to decipher it all too through,
Keep going.
Have Ann appointed to anything else she doesn't know about it, do we?
Hmm?
As we don't have Ann appointed to anything else in it she doesn't know about, do we?
No.
Make sure you mute your.
Well, if she leaves, we'll appoint her.
She'll be all right. No, you'll be all right. Power through.
Oh.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so three items that the Land Use Advisory Committee and the Planning Board have been working on. And all three may go to the next town meeting. So let's start out with housing. Okay, so we haven't had much in the way of housing development for quite a while in Damascus. We really have a need for worker housing. We have a lot of folks coming to town who are moving into town looking for housing. There just really has not been much. I've talked to developers over the period of time, and one of the problems is that it appeared that we have a very small area of town that's sewered, and sewer is important for larger developments. We also have not very generous dimensional requirements for new housing. So based on that, I did some research, and this is what we're going to talk about tonight. This is the downtown area, and what you see in blue, that's the extent of the sewer system in Damascus. It's not very much. And this is not a municipal system, so it's not like the town can decide to expand the sewer system. It's a sewer district, independent sewer district. If you look at the town overall, it's really very small. And the purpose of this discussion is not to propose expanding the sewer system, but we have to better utilize what we have. Now, yeah, I guess you can see this pretty well. What I did is some research of towns in our general market area. And what I was looking at is what are their requirements on multifamily densities? And then I looked at, well, based on those densities, how much land would be required for a 20-unit housing development, some type of multifamily, whether it's townhouses or what have you. And Damascus, you can see that in the commercial 2 district requires 2.8 acres based on the current dimensional requirements. And then the general residential and commercial 1 in rural districts, 4.6 acres. That's for 20 units. Every number you see there in red is one of our neighboring towns in one of their neighboring districts, in one of their districts, will allow the same size development on a smaller sewer lot. This is all sewer. So as you can see, at least in that sense, if a housing developer is looking to go someplace in the mid-coast, just based on the cost of land, not even talk about the availability, just on the cost of land, we are not very competitive. Our friends over in Waldoboro, basically it's 2.3 acres, which is less than our commercial 2 district and half of what we require in our general residential commercial 1 or rural district. Again, we're talking about multifamily. So 2 approaches to improving utilization of sewered land and improving the economics of new affordable and market rate housing in Damascus. One would be to revise the minimum lot size requirements for sewered land in the general residential and rural districts to be the same as those in the commercial 2 district.
The second one would be to encourage housing developers to create planned unit development, housing developments by updating and modernizing our PUD provisions and incorporating modest incentives. So right now, in our general residential, rural, and C1, well, C1 is not really an issue, but in our general residential and rural district, we require 10,000 square feet per lot or principal building, just flat. In our C2, it's 10,000 square feet per principal building, or 6,000 square feet thereafter. What I would like to do is use that exact same formula for the rural and general residential district. It's not something that we don't have now already. Again, we're talking about sewered land. We're not talking about down on Route 130 someplace. It's land that's already or can be sewered. So that would actually, if you go back up here, a 10,000 square, a 20 unit housing development would, in the general residential and commercial commercial one in rural, instead of being 4.6 acres, it would only require 2.8 acres. And a multifamily development, the footprint is pretty economical. It's not like a 2,500 square foot lots or buildings. So that's the first proposal. Second proposal is, just read this, section 101(6)G of the land use ordinance. Those are the PUD provisions, and those are really supposed to govern multifamily development. So in the ordinance, the purpose is to allow for new concepts of housing development where maximum variations of design may be allowed, provided that the net residential density shall be no greater than is permitted in the district in which the development is proposed. In reality, the current PUD regulations don't provide much incentive for developers to utilize them in sewered areas. Compared to the open space subdivision provisions of the subdivision ordinance, that was approved probably 3 or 4 years ago, and those have substantial incentives for economic subdivisions in the non-sewered areas. The PUD provisions instead, they simply provide a regulatory framework for residential development. So these are some of the provisions that I'm recommending. These would be to the planned unit development provisions. Up to 1/2 of the land area that is excluded from net residential acreage may be included when calculating permitted residential density. Now, the net residential area, that oftentimes is wetland or steep slopes, things like that. Now, while you would not want a house placed in that, that's certainly valuable open space. So what I'm recommending is that when a developer calculates the permitted number of units, that they can be based on the 1/2 of the land area that would normally be excluded from that residential acreage be included for that calculation. Dropping the minimum project area from 10 acres to 5 acres to allow smaller developments. The minimum lot area and road frontage for lots fronting on a private road may be reduced by 1/2. Now, if it's with these provisions, if a lot is on a public road, it would still have the same provisions. But if it's on a private road, it would be reduced by 50%. The next one is pretty important. More than one principal building may be located on an individual lot with reduced setbacks. This is zero lot line development. It's similar to what's now permitted in the open space subdivision provisions. You can imagine a development where you have multiple single-family detached homes, and the big development up in Thompson on the north side of 196. Very efficient use of land, and if folks like that, we're not forcing folks to buy a house in that kind of development, but it's a great way of efficiently using land. And in that case, in the Thompson development, that's actually upscale housing. We would require all residential buildings to be sited so they have a relationship in the open space. Now we require them to physically abut the open space, which really reduces flexibility. A minimum of 1/3 of the gross acreage of a planned unit development must be retained as a common open space. And to facilitate this, I am proposing to include the net residential area and net residential density definitions that are now in the subdivision ordinance, to pull them over and put them in the land use ordinance. So that's the general gist of it. I talked to 2 large housing developers that have housing developments in this area, and both of them are very enthusiastic. For example, it makes a big difference. They can buy the same piece of land and be able to densify development compared to what is allowed now.
So I just want to backing up a little bit, but we need, there's 2 basic needs that we found here in Damascotta for housing. We need more affordable housing because we have a dearth of workers and a lot of issues. And we need housing for seniors, people who don't want the big home anymore, but they want to stay in the mid-coast and Damascotta if possible. As Bob mentioned, he's talked to 2 developers recently, but we've had 3 or 4 developers come in over the years, and it just seems like we've got these little glitches in our ordinance that are preventing them from moving forward. And one example, I don't think I'm speaking out of school. Spectrum Generations, when they left their building where the Subway sandwich shop is, they couldn't rent out the apartments up above them. They couldn't divide the office space and make it apartments because they didn't have enough land. And they would have had to buy an adjacent property to have enough land to meet our criteria for number of units. And here we are on Main Street, and where we want to encourage that type of development, and our own ordinances are getting in the way. So what Bob's talking about is a way to modify them. To be more accommodating for this type of growth.
So Bob, there are no variance procedures for pre-existing situations?
Pre-existing situations.
Like that building that you just described?
No, not really. For example, the affordable housing development out near the wastewater treatment facility, they've got a lot that's 9-something acres, and trying to remember the calculation now, but they could add maybe 10 units out there, something like that. If this were enacted, they could add, I think, about 30 units, just based on that different dimensional requirement. Now that's big because the land's already there. It's a beautiful use. It's got access, and that would encourage that kind of additional development. Now, again, our sewer area is very small. So this really doesn't, it applies to the residential district, but it only is a fraction of the residential and the rural district.
And a significant part of this is working with the sanitary district to get them. And I know they don't want to expand on kind of a speculation basis, but if we have a developer who's ready to move ahead on the improvements, then that's something we can work with the sewer district on.
Any other comments on that? Okay, so the second one, talk about. Let's see. formula business ordinance, proposed ordinance. And I'll just make a simple presentation on it.
Just share your screen.
Okay.
Turn it off because it was.
Here.
Share screen.
Oh, gotcha.
And
Okay. We've got a really nice downtown, and there's been concerns expressed over time that our interesting mix of mostly local types of businesses. The downtown could be adversely affected if we get the kind of national change in, the Dunkin' Donuts and things like that. Dunkin' Donuts and those types of businesses are important in Damascotta, but our downtown is special. And if folks have been down here all summer long, just packed with folks. And there's a lot of interest expressed in how do we preserve the downtown? And one way from the formula businesses. And so a quirk of zoning is that you can't prohibit something from an existing zoning district without going through a lot of administrative practices. You've got to do a lot of notifications. It's an expensive and time-consuming process. You can add uses to the zone ordinance, and that's fine. So what we propose to do is, well, let's just read the purpose. The purpose and intent of these amendments to the Damascotta Land Use Ordinance is to address the adverse impact of nationwide standardized businesses on Damascotta's historic downtown area. Proliferation of formula businesses will have a negative impact on the community's economy, historical relevance, and unique character. These uses are therefore prohibited in the Commercial 1 district, which is the downtown core, in order to maintain a unique retail and dining experience. Formula businesses frustrate this goal by detracting from their overall historic downtown experience and threatening its tourist economy. So how do you accomplish that? It's actually relatively simple. You define a formula business. And it's a type of retail. We're talking about a retail sales establishment, chain store, outlet store, restaurant, tavern, bar, takeout, food establishment, which along with 20 or more other establishments maintains 2 or more of the following features. That means the chain would be at least 20 of these businesses. Standardized menu or standardized array of merchandise with 50% of or more of in-stock merchandise from a single distributor bearing uniform markings. Think Ace Hardware, which is nationally they have more than 20 outlets and they have uniforms and more than half their stock comes from Ace warehouses. Trademark or service mark defined as a word, phrase, symbol, or design, or combination of words, phrases, symbols, or designs that identifies and distinguishes the source of the goods from one party from those of others on products or part of store design. Standardized interior decor, including but not limited to style of furniture, wall coverings, permanent fixtures, think McDonald's. Standardized color scheme used throughout the interior or exterior of establishment. That Dunkin' Donuts does that a lot. Standardized uniforms. So, and these are not my creation. This is a fairly standard definition of what a formula business is. So how do we accomplish it? We specifically allow formula businesses in the C2 district. And by not allowing them in the C1 district, it's not listed, they'd be prohibited there. We want to encourage these businesses in our primary commercial area, which is C2, but not in the downtown. So that's the formula business proposal.
I presume Camden and Bath have something similar.
I don't know what towns do. Freeport, I believe, does, but I'm not, I don't recall what other towns do. You know, our downtown is pretty homogeneous. I mean, it's with the historic structures. I mean, there are there's a couple of non-historic structures, but it's pretty homogeneous downtown.
Well, that's what I was thinking about Camden. Camden seems to have accomplished the same thing. I just wondered what other.
I couldn't tell you that. Any questions on that one? Okay, then the last one. We've been working quite a bit on the land use ordinance. Now, the land use ordinance, the list of permitted uses is quite old. I mean, it's many, many years old. And of course, the business sector and other activities have evolved over time. And our list of uses really doesn't anticipate a lot of the new things that have come down the pike since then. And so it's very limiting. We have no provision that would allow the planning board to interpret a use. We don't have definitions for many of the uses in there. I'll give you an example. Gas stations. We have gas stations in town, but they're not actually permitted. I don't know how, you know, they're in town, but they're not listed. And so they become legal non-conforming uses. So we wanted to eliminate a lot of that. So what we, I'm trying to not look this way. I'm trying to avert my eyes.
I don't take it personally.
Okay, so.
Don't have to worry about help.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we've done is modernize the list of uses, and you've got a handout on this, but everything in yellow are new uses. Now, this proposal does not eliminate any existing use, or no, it does not eliminate any use that is now in the table of uses, but it provides much better definition. Whoops.
Here comes tech support.
We're not sharing this.
I didn't know I did not. Okay.
No.
Roll.
Stop sharing. And let's share again.
Right here.
Got it.
Bring Lily with the next time, Josh.
I'll just be past the bedtime.
You guys go late.
Not usually.
So
Bedtime.
this is a proposal that was worked on. The land use advisory committee worked on it for about 2 years. Planning board has seen it twice. And we've had, I guess I answer any questions.
Well, somebody, like C3, what does 3 mean?
Oh, I didn't include, those are existing notes
Oh,
that are in the ordinance. I did not include the notes on
okay,
this.
all right.
You know, for example, we allow automobile repair now, but we don't allow the gas stations. And we don't allow gas stations even as an accessory use to a convenience store, although we have that. And there will be a provision included in this that a planning board, if the planning board finds that a proposed use is similar to a permitted use or conditional use as listed in there, they can allow it.
Mhm.
So we get that gray area.
Get some more flexibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So really, that's the idea.
What's the process if it's conditional?
We have an antiquated conditional use process. Basically, almost every use, very few uses are permitted. I don't know why they do this, but as a conditional use, you have to meet some additional criteria. That means you go to the planning board. Planning board will review it. For example, if it's well, let's look here at a boarding house. Someone proposes a boarding house. So it's site plan review. And then in addition, it's conditional use review. So it's kind of odd that you would have that many conditional uses, but we didn't really want to tackle that at this point. We wanted to see if we can get this thing through. I didn't include in this, but we probably have 30 or so new definitions, because it's hard for a planning board to approve a use when we really don't know specifically what it is. So this eliminates a lot of uncertainties. So that's that proposal. Any questions?
This one is mainly a cleanup.
Yeah.
This is really
of
cleanup.
Outdated provisions in our ordinance. The other two are much more substantive, and I think have the possibility of being more controversial.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, this is good.
So I guess I would request at some point, hold a public hearing on this and see if we go through that, and maybe June town meeting, I suppose.
And yeah, what would the schedule? We probably want to have the public hearing starting in February, and that way, if there's any changes that come about as a result of the public hearings, we'll have time to conduct other public hearings, because you have to have it in final form at a public hearing, after a public hearing, before you go to the town meeting. So we'd be looking at having the public hearing starting in February, and then having this on the June, these three items on the June town meeting warrant, annual town meeting warrant.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Thank you for your hard work. And if anybody's watching and they have any questions, Bob Florence is or send them to me as well.
Yeah, by June, you have SpaceX or something like that on there. New use.
Pardon me?
By June, you'll have SpaceX.
I know I still have a gas station down there
Yeah,
for
there
a
you
few
go.
more months anyway.
Well, maybe.
They
Thank you,
said-
Bob.
They said today that Musk will be the first trillionaire.
He's going to eliminate Wi-Fi. He's got all these satellites up there. He's got thousands of them up there.
Yeah.
So we have
Are we?
one more workshop sitting back there waiting for us.
I think he's tired. I was waiting to see how long it'd take before he took his coat off.
I thought you were doing third shift tonight.
Yeah. Loosen the tie up.
You did do that.
Bob, thank you.
And usually we're not this late.
That you can.
Yeah, I think that's a
I
smart
won't be here
idea.
long enough, don't worry.
Oh, you will. I'm gonna drag this thing out.
You can take that bulletproof
Yeah, something, yeah.
vest off. too.
I don't know. No, that's a chubby belly. It's not a vest. So first, listen, I want to apologize that I'm sitting in front of you guys to talk about wages, because we really appreciated the fact that you folks and the town, gave the staff a pretty decent wage increase this last time. But I want to follow up on that when we did our last wage increase during that union contract, we were on the tail end of our contract, which was essentially the start of everybody else's contracts. So essentially we continue to chase the tail. So, every single time a police department goes up in their wages to chase another municipal police department, the next department whose contract comes up then chases that highest paid department. So essentially what's happened, as you folks probably already know, is that there's a national police shortage. I'll start off by saying that your town is fully staffed and has been fully staffed with a really good complement of law enforcement officers that still do the job. They like to get paid, but they still do it because they enjoy the job. So we're very fortunate. So when I sit here, I'm not sitting here telling you that we're bleeding, meaning that we're hemorrhaging people. But what I'm telling you is because of the shortage across the county at a countywide level, that's forced other towns who are super short staffed to have to think about what that recruitment looks like. And unfortunately, we all know recruitment involves money. So as these towns continue to recruit and try to recruit what I would call an impossible task because there's nobody that wants to be a law enforcement officer. It's not, I don't even know how much money we can throw at this for a recruitment standpoint. It's more retention. But so as this starts to increase, I have to be very nervous and I have to get in front of this with you folks and say, I'm not comfortable specifically telling you what these other towns are likely going to go to because nothing's been set in stone. But I will tell you that there's substantial pay raises. So we all have to be cognizant that when these substantial pay raises take place, we now have to start thinking about, are we going to lose our qualified, high energy professional officers when we start talking potentially $5 an hour pay raises that could be happening in other agencies. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm saying to you that there are significant enough numbers that even though we work really hard and our community supports our department and we appreciate everything you guys do, we cannot be naive that when we start talking about, $15,000, $20,000 differences in pay and maybe some difference in benefits and maybe some take home cars or whatever that looks like, we would be naive to think that I can keep my staff happy enough to keep them here and have them not think about that carrot that's being dangled in front of them. So, I guess what I'm coming to you today is to tell you that I'm looking to see if the board is willing to start discussing a pay raise outside of what our union contract talks about right now as a retention tool, not as a recruitment tool, because I don't need to recruit. But if we don't retain what we have right now, we're not going to be able to hire anybody. If what happens in the other municipalities does happen, we will be substantially behind. And if we don't get in front of this and they do leave, we're not going to be able to hire anybody else at our pay rate without doing a pay increase. And now we're fighting for the same 3 people for 15 jobs in the entire county. So I don't have exact figures. I want to throw out some figures. And please understand that these are just figures right now based on what I know that other agencies may go through. If we did a 15% pay increase across the boards for our current staff, that would likely put them in line with what's probably going to happen as a county-wide number in all the municipalities for the most part. Without any FICA, Medicare, Cheryl would have to give you those numbers. We're looking at a total of likely $36,820. That would put the entire agency likely on the same playing field as what's going to happen with everybody else. That is not going ahead of anybody else. That is not necessarily falling behind. That is an estimate based upon what I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from other agencies. Again, I don't think it's fair that I talk about numbers, but I can assure you I've done a ton of research on this. I have had meetings with the town managers in our municipality, all the chiefs. We've got together. We've talked about what this looks like. I've spoke at the MMA convention specifically about recruitment and retention and what that looks like. We're going against some incentives such as the hiring bonuses. Now, I'm not saying we need that because we don't need to hire anybody. But what I'm saying is these towns that are willing to throw this substantial amount of money to get that unknown in there to fill these shifts, we need to be focusing on making sure that we keep the staff that we have, that we all in this room and every community member have met and know our town and our community. If we can continue to retain the people, I don't think we're going to have an issue losing anybody to another agency. But I think that no matter how happy they are, at the end of the day, they have to think about retirement. They have to think of what does that look like in 15 or 18 years. We want them to stay in this community, right? Because that's why we hired them and they do a great job. So again, that is a 15%. That's what I'm proposing. How do we get there? Obviously, I know how our budget works, and I don't have that kind of money because on top of this $36,800, if we did even consider this, there are still overtime issues that we need to get in front of because with the pay raise obviously comes, more overtime. There's the FICA, the retirement, all of these things that I can't even estimate what that costs. My question to you folks is, can ARPA funds, well, let me back up. Can unused money from last year's budget, and I don't know what that looks like. I think we had a little bit left, but it wasn't a lot.
No.
Are we allowed to?
Just a second, Jason. Some of these issues we need to vet out at the staff level.
Okay.
So it's not appropriate right now to ask the board for a pay increase and how we're going to use carryover funds. We need to work that out at the staff level first.
Okay.
So just a caution there. And then the other thing I've got to say, and I know I've got a reputation for being cheap, and I take pride in that. But we do have, I'm not trying to counterpoint the chief here, but we do have a 3-year contract that was negotiated with the police union. I think we need to be very careful about talking about pay and benefit increases, without going into an executive session and talking about a collective bargaining process. I understand what the chief is talking about. I understand the police shortage and the retention issues, but I want us to steer away from any pay increases at this level, this discussion, and any sort of things of how we would amend the union contract. So sorry to put that out there, but I just need to put that caution out there.
And that's exactly why I thought this
Yeah.
needed to be an executive session, because these aren't things that
It doesn't fall under the criteria of an executive session.
But there is a crisis, folks, and I just want you to understand that. And again, sitting up here to talk about money, it's not something I wanted to do, and we're very appreciative of what we have. We need to be cognizant and aware that this is coming down the pipeline, and there is a substantial shortage. There's a shortage in actual police presence on the street countywide. I'm not going to discuss that because this isn't an appropriate place, but there are genuine fears. I have genuine fears. Every administrator in the county has genuine fears about true public safety and what that looks like. And unfortunately, we have to combat that. And we are fortunate to have a crew. And I just want to make sure that we can get a discussion going about what we're going to do to keep the commodity. Because quite frankly, every single police car we have and every single radio we have is only effective if we have a good, responsible professional behind it to respond to calls. So I don't know if we can go at some point, we can talk about a later executive session.
Well, I think we need to, if we're talking about if the union's asking for a renegotiation of the current contract, we definitely can do that in executive session. And I just want to be clear and on the record that the chief and the town manager have worked over the last decade to get to the point where we've got an excellent police department. We've got, including the chief, 5 excellent officers, and that has come with a lot of work, not just on the chief's part, but on my part. So
yeah,
I'm kind of the door out, and he's been bringing top-notch people in. So to be absolutely honest about it. So I don't want any of my comments or any other comments here to be in any way perceived or received as critical of the officers that we have now, because we've got a dynamite department.
Yeah, we do.
Well, and make no mistake, guys, the reason why we've been able to do that is because of the support from the community. Quite frankly, you look around and that, community involvement is huge in what we do. And if the community didn't love and respect us, we wouldn't be able to keep top-notch people. They're just going to leave, right? I mean, if they don't have support, why be here? And we've got support from you folks. We have support from Matt. We have support from our community. We're really lucky. It is an absolute, every single cog in that wheel is working effectively and it's greased. And I just want to make sure that we don't lose that momentum that we're building. That's all.
Yeah, we gave a huge, amount of community support for our department.
Yeah.
Chief, I was going to ask you real quick, not get into details, but as far as your research and seeing pay increases possibly and whatnot, not getting numbers, but how do we, benefits wise, packages, are they, town to town, are they kind of the same? As far as insurance and.
We're very fortunate.
Yeah.
I would say you folks provide us probably what I would argue is one of the best benefit packages. And that also has been really helpful because every single one of our employees here utilize those benefits. They have family members, they have doctor's appointments. Again, not something we had to start with. And that's been a really integral part in being able to keep people here. So
that's always something I always look into is that whole package, where
we can take that benefit package. And again, I know we can't speak about this here, but be assured, nobody is complaining about benefits that the town of Damerscott offers our agency. We're very happy with that. And again, that's That's been very beneficial in being able to keep people because we don't have 20-year-olds anymore, right? We're very fortunate. I think our youngest gentleman is in his mid-30s, but they see the benefit in that retirement. And
Yeah,
they've all
yeah.
been here long enough to where they're actually thinking about when I retire,
And they're starting to see.
which
that,
is
yeah,
exciting because they're thinking about when I retire here,
Yeah.
which gives us all a good feeling that
Yeah,
we'll
it
have to
gives
put
us
up with
all
them for the
some
next 15 years. But that's the goal of law enforcement, just like EMS is being able to hold these people long-term for more than just money, right?
Yeah.
For the community
Well,
support, for all the things that we have to offer.
There's a couple different aspects to it. You look at the pay rate, the benefits, and then the quality of life.
Absolutely.
Which, quality of life for police officers.
I think that's probably number 2 for everybody.
But I think we hope that, the community as a whole creates that quality of life,
Yeah.
which we appreciate and whatnot. So
We're very happy. And we
You know,
appreciate that.
I appreciate your forward thinking. I like to think of myself as a forward thinker because the reality is this is where we're headed. It doesn't matter what we think. This is exactly where we're headed. And if you look at the consumer price index right now at 5.4%, it's reality. This is where we're at. And if we want to retain people, we do have to be open to those discussions.
No, I appreciate
Sure.
that and understand too, law enforcement as a whole, it is no longer the stealing of officers, the poaching of officers we talk about. I won't name names, but there's a particular agency that was fully staffed, that's extremely respected and valued. And they lost 3 officers and not one of them went to another agency. They walked away from the job. One of my very close dear friends has been an officer for 24 years, had 3 years left for retirement, and he walked away from the job last week because the perception in the public is very, very different. And that's a prime example of a community not standing behind the department versus, but I appreciate that. And it's a very scary thing. Again, I'm embarrassed that we sit up here after you guys were so good to us, for sure. And that's not something I want to do. But again, I also don't want to be coming up here telling you folks that, oh, by the way, we have 10 hours of service that we offer you every day, and nobody will respond to your call when you call for us. The budget doesn't change as far as the budget is still what the budget is. But for me to say to you, I'm 3 people down and I don't have one single applicant and I can't provide the services that you pay for, that's way more embarrassing to me. And I just want to make sure that we hopefully don't get into a position where I have to tell you that. So
reality is reality. So
well, it is. Yeah.
And this isn't the only department that's dealing with this.
Correct.
It's not like
Well, it's across the board, municipality and private sector and everything.
So Matt and I will get together and we can discuss whatever we need to discuss moving forward.
I was aware that what the chief was going to say tonight, as far as the concerns we have as a police department, that police departments have all across the country, and then, what's happening in our own county. But I think the specifics, especially where we've got a union contract in place, need to be worked through.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And I don't.
Just for the record, when did we sign this contract? I'm not.
July 1.
Right.
Yeah, July, the contract went into effect July 1. We finished up the negotiations
changed quick.
back in January, February.
So I will tell you that just pre-COVID, I had a meeting with the police chiefs and I actually said to them that within 5 years, we'll all be lucky if there's still anybody left to do this job. And everybody thought, because again, right, the brand new chief, what do I know? I'm just a young rookie kid. And everybody looks at me now and says, holy crap, you were right. I said, yeah, think about how quickly this progressed. And I knew we were going to be off by $1 or $2 when everybody else gets their contract, but how quickly everybody left the job caused this incredible stir where now we have communities saying, we can't not have law enforcement. There is no such thing as 911. Sorry, nobody can come out to your house. Yeah. Or maybe that is a such thing, but how do we that's not possible. I can't conceptualize calling 911 and literally saying, I'm sorry, I don't have anybody. We're very fortunate that we have a staff member who's willing to be on call, or else it'd be very scary. There literally would be no police services. And that makes me sick to my stomach. So, because again, we still do this job because we like the job and we see the benefits in our community from us being out there and doing the job that we do. I will tell you that we probably spoil you guys sometimes with some of the things that we do above and beyond what probably meets that definition of law enforcement. But it's worth it because here we sit being able to have this open dialogue and not being upset and angry. Sick months, less than 6 months, we went from having a countywide relatively fully staffed agencies to, I think there was 11 total vacancies in the county as of a couple months ago.
Yeah.
That's not just the sheriff's department. I'm talking about municipal
Right.
in the county. And there are, I think, 127 or 142 agencies that are understaffed right now. And we've been able to hold it together and my staff has no idea that I'm
Statewide?
here. Understand that. They do not know.
Just,
My staff members did not come to me. My sergeant knows because of the union
Mhm.
aspect of it. He needed to know that we were going to discuss it. I needed to have permission to do so. But my staff has no idea. I'm not telling you my staff would leave. I'm just telling you that it scares the crap out of me because I couldn't even get mad at them. How do you get angry if they leave to go make a lot more money to do the same job? I just want to make sure that, yeah.
Yep.
So,
yeah, so just be proactive and have the
Yeah.
conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Get ahead of it.
excellent. Well, thank you, folks, and
Dude,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Workshop
Is that
concluded.
one more? One more?
No, usually it's quick.
Would you like to add anything?
We're all good.
I have a 2-hour limit. I limit up to 2 hours. Can't make this decision.
This is a light agenda.
have them.
Yeah. This is, yeah, we had several.
Usually it's like an hour.
Yeah.
It's all Daryl's fault.
Yeah, my fault. You want me to start using the gavel? Like